ManhWa was just joining the sword selection ceremony, but he completely stunned the Empire's strongest swordsman, simply because what I am demonstrating right now happens to be the legendary sluggish rhythm. First, it pushes the human sixth sense to its absolute limit, and then uses that to block all of the opponent's attack paths. It looks slow, but it's a bizarre sword style that controls the entire field. But just 2.5 hours ago, I was just an ordinary medic, because the power of the curse is constantly eroding this world. Those humans who cannot resist the curse's encroachment will eventually turn into mindless monsters. Then, to fight these rampant undead creatures, various heroes gathered and formed an organization called the Sky Generation. As for my mission, it was to be ready for the leader, Arthur Boley, to deal with the curses he unfortunately contracted in battle. At this moment, a burst of purple energy exploded from within my body. This is the trump card of the Wilhelm family outcast, and also a stealing skill, despised by the entire family. The moment the curse was forcibly stripped away, I doubled over in pain, and black blood sprayed uncontrollably from my mouth. This let them know it was just a skill that could steal curses. But during this process, it causes me extremely severe injuries. On the battlefield not far away, the Necromancer Knight swung his pitch-black giant scythe. That terrifying, world-ending aura made it hard for everyone to breathe. Thinking you can take on a Death Knight with just these people is a total joke. Before the words even faded, the long sword in Arthur's hand clattered as it fell heavily to the ground. Hearing this, 3 women immediately rushed over, holding Arthur tightly. Seeing this, I let out 2 dry laughs. As the leader of the Sky Generation, does this jerk even know what the heck he's doing right now? Arthur's cold voice slowly echoed. Let's just end this now. The world's hope is already gone. Everything we're doing now is just a waste of time. These words made me snap my head up. Give up? Arthur, you freaking coward. How dare you say that? Do you have any idea how many people died just to get you here? Everyone is fighting for world peace with their very last breath. And all you can think about is cuddling with women? You better shut your mouth right now. You useless brat. Karashu, the person who spoke, was the 3rd-generation empress of the Aphania Empire, Sigurinn. To her, Lord Arthur had already given his all, and no matter what, Arthur is the only hope for the entire Aphania Empire, while a thieving loser like me has no right to lecture him. This made me cover my face in disbelief. Then, I suddenly burst into mad laughter. I'm the waste rejected by my family, and the thief you all talk about. But without this waste, you all would have been piles of meat on the battlefield long ago. After saying that, I extended my rune-covered finger and then pointed at the women Arthur was protecting. Listen up, all of you. Without my stealing skill, you wouldn't have even reached the central battlefield. Then, my gaze locked onto the red-haired witch, Abella, the Sky Generation member from the Magic Tower, who was looking at Arthur with such concern. Abella, did you forget to? Once you lose your voice, you can't use magic. You begged me over and over to steal your curse. But when I was suffering from the curse's backlash and needed medicine to control it, you didn't hesitate to attack me. Next, I looked at Merlin Diana holding her spear. She was Aphania's most famous imperial sharpshooter. When you were kneeling and crying in pain from the curse, when you were begging me to strip away your curse, you sure didn't have that cold look on your face. As the curse runes continued to spread, I forced myself to stand up, staggering on my feet. And finally you, Sigurinn, the 3rd-generation empress of the Aphania Empire, back at the academy. Just because I was a commoner from the Starland Kingdom, you targeted me at every turn. But even then, I endured all the humiliation and did everything to heal your eyes, simply because you were members of the Sky Generation, the ones chosen to save the world, while I was just a waste with no talent for combat, and the disposable thief you all called me. After saying that, I stared at Arthur, my eyes filled with unwavering conviction. But now you want to give up on everything? For what exactly? I once saw you standing at the front lines of the Sky Generation, even while leading people who didn't understand you. That's why I decided to stay by your side. But why at the final moment? Are you giving up so easily? Hearing this, Arthur slowly raised his head, just as he said before. This world has already reached its end. What he plans to do is tear it all down and start over. The reason why? He has experienced the end of the world more than once, because his innate ability is called regression. My expression froze completely. My mind went blank. I never would have guessed that the savior before me possessed such an insane ability. Arthur's gaze then swept over the 3 women beside him. Besides, this time he also gained a memory inheritance skill. Starting over with past experiences would give him a better chance of stopping the next world's destruction. So, he was going to start a new journey with the 3 of them. My voice trembled with disbelief. Then what do I even matter in all of this? Arthur's eyes suddenly became ice cold. As for you, there's no need to take you back. Those words were like a bolt from the blue, striking my heart with full force, completely shattering all of my beliefs. Arthur still had that look of intimacy on his face. That skill called Black Time was indeed very useful. It could easily steal those powerful, unbreakable curses. But because of those very curses, your body and soul are broken beyond repair. So, bringing someone back who is broken and covered in curses makes no sense for the regression at all. It's much more efficient to just bring back A fresh, new tool. My pupils dilated, and tears couldn't stop streaming down my cheeks. So from the very beginning, I was just a consumable part of a machine. This guy never saw me as a comrade who fought by his side. Arthur looked down at me with a cruel smile. There's no need to worry. In the next world, and even the one after that, I'll still put you to good use. So just say goodbye to this world. You useless Wilhelm brat. Karashu. Actually, I should have realized that if Arthur really considered me a comrade back in the Sky generation, when everyone was ignoring and outcasting me, Arthur wouldn't have just stood by and watched. My teeth clenched as a wild obsession surged within my heart. I suddenly remembered my black time skill. It seemed it wasn't just for stealing curses, but could work on others' innate abilities as well. Only, stealing a skill was far harder than stealing a curse, so I had never tried it on Arthur. But right now, this was my only chance to survive. In the next second, dark energy like a tidal wave poured frantically into my body. Black time. At the same time, Arthur was bathed in the brilliant, blinding light of regression. He opened his arms, ready to embrace the new world. Now, black shadows surged frantically out of me, instantly turning into a giant hand that eclipsed the sky, carrying a terrifying power that could destroy the world. It lunged down toward Arthur's position. When I opened my eyes again, I froze. Isn't this the Chingsong mansion where I lived as a kid? What's even more shocking is that the skin I touch is smooth and delicate, completely unlike the rough texture from the curses in my past life. The next moment, memories flooded back like a tide. Those terrifying images of the world's end swirled in my head. Tossing and turning, I suddenly bolted upright in bed. In my mind, it was a bone-chilling winter, standing on a snowy mountain peak, watching Arthur and the others heartlessly walk away. But now, all I feel on my skin is the sweltering heat of summer. I couldn't help but let out a low chuckle. I actually stole Arthur's regression skill. But as I laughed, my expression turned to confusion. How the heck did I manage to steal it? The world thought my black time skill could steal anything at will without limits, but no one knew it had a fatal flaw. Every time the skill is activated, a lock is instantly generated. Only by picking this lock can I proceed with the theft, and the difficulty of picking this lock depends entirely on how much the owner values the target. Even if it's just a common rock on the road, as long as the owner sees it as a treasure, the difficulty of the unlocking condition would skyrocket to the limit. And for an insane ability like regression, the owner would obviously value it immensely. So the theft difficulty should have grown exponentially. To be accurate, I recalled the scene before my rebirth once more. Black time was definitely activated successfully back then, but I didn't see the lock that was supposed to appear at all. If there wasn't even a lock, could it be that Arthur had wanted to give up that skill long ago? That man known as the King of Heroes would occasionally show a look of extreme exhaustion, as if carrying a massive burden alone, repeating the journey toward a dying world again and again. Maybe for him, endless regression was no different from a curse, leaving him physically and mentally drained, unable to hold on any longer. After a long silence, I slowly raised my head. But this is fine. I just took away something you wanted to throw away anyway. So Arthur, you should actually be thanking me. Then, before leaving the room, I checked my reflection in the mirror. About 10 years old, not very tall, but the muscle lines on my arms were firm and tight, the result of years of sword training. After all, behind me is the strongest martial family in the Starling Kingdom, Wilhelm, according to the timeline. Right now, I'm exactly at the age before the family proof ceremony, and that so-called proof ceremony is the top priority of the Wilhelm family. It decides which god a family member can contract with and what kind of skills they'll be granted. It's the ultimate stage to prove one's strength. The higher the rank of the contracted god, the brighter the family member's future. So the direct bloodline of the family has always been highly valued. But I was the family's only exception, born without any martial talent. I didn't receive any god's favor at the ceremony, becoming the laughingstock of the whole family. Afterward, I was heartlessly kicked out of the main house and exiled to this facility specially meant for the Chingsong mansion for losers. But what no one knows is that the one recognized by the whole family as a waste right now holds all the secrets of the world's end in his mind. It was a catastrophe that even the Sky generation couldn't stop. So as a regressor, I should be able to prevent all of this from happening. Then I suddenly clenched my fist, a determined light burning in my eyes. It's not a matter of if I can do it. It's that I must do it. If the world is destroyed, I'll perish right along with it. Just as I reached the stairs, a familiar figure made my pupils constrict. The old butler, Arioto, was bowing to me. In my original memories, the only butler of Chingsong Mansion was also the only person who truly cared for me. But when I was 14, he would secretly poison me under my brother's orders. That was the first time in my life I faced betrayal. Then I fell into deep thought. My half-sister, Charlotte, is a once-in-a-millennium genius of the entire Wilhelm family. At just 15 years old, she already earned the title of Sword Saint. And because of that, the Wilhelm family was able to escape its decline and restore its prestige. But Belokin Wilhelm, from another branch of the family, stared at Charlotte's back with a gloomy gaze. He had to get his hands on the position a first-in-line heir to the Wilhelm family. But the risk of dealing with Charlotte was too high, and her mother was quite a handful too. So, Belokin's eyes fell on me instead. After that, Belokin naturally sought out Arioto. He slowly pushed a vial of potion, emanating a bizarre aura toward Arioto. As long as that waste Karashu drank a single drop, then his daughter's medical expenses, and even the debts he owed because of them, would all be resolved. Arioto closed his eyes. Young Master Karashu was the child he raised as his own. He simply couldn't betray his nature to do such things. Belokin's gaze was like a cold blade, stabbing straight into his heart. So you plan to choose someone else's kid over your own flesh and blood daughter? In my past life, this day should have been Arioto's assassination attempt on me, but he still couldn't get past his own conscience, and finally chose to end his own life. Unable to overcome the guilt, Arioto drank the bowl of poisoned soup meant for me and collapsed unconscious on the cold floor. Looking at Arioto standing before me now, my tone didn't hold a hint of warmth. The poison my brother Belokin gave you to kill me. Where are you hiding it? Arioto stiffened all over, his face losing all color instantly. He waved his hands frantically, claiming he didn't know anything about any poison. I stepped closer, asking, do you plan to play dumb until the end to pay for your daughter's treatment? You were already prepared to discard this waste of a person, weren't you? Hearing that, Arioto's face immediately turned pale as death. I sighed softly in my heart. In my past life, this pressure is exactly what pushed him to the end, and it's because of me that he received those orders. Arioto stood frozen on the spot. He thought I'd throw a massive tantrum. But not only did I not do that, I seemed to have completely forgiven him. I reached out, my tone softening slightly. There's one condition for my forgiveness. The scene shifted to the public library of Chingsong Mansion. I stopped walking, turned to Arioto, and gave an order for losers. But what no one knows is that the one recognized by the whole family as a waste right now holds all the secrets of the world's end in his mind. It was a catastrophe that even the Sky generation couldn't stop. So as a regressor, I should be able to prevent all of this from happening. Then I suddenly clenched my fist, a determined light burning in my eyes. It's not a matter of if I can do it. It's that I must do it. If the world is destroyed, I'll perish right along with it. Just as I reached the stairs, a familiar figure made my pupils constrict. The old butler, Arioto, was bowing to me. In my original memories, the only butler of Chingsong Mansion was also the only person who truly cared for me. But when I was 14, he would secretly poison me under my brother's orders. That was the first time in my life I faced betrayal. Then I fell into deep thought. My half-sister, Charlotte, is a once-in-a-millennium genius of the entire Wilhelm family. At just 15 years old, she already earned the title of Sword Saint, and because of that, the Wilhelm family was able to escape its decline and restore its prestige. But Belokin Wilhelm, from another branch of the family, stared at Charlotte's back with a gloomy gaze. He had to get his hands on the position. A first-in-line heir to the Wilhelm family. But the risk of dealing with Charlotte was too high, and her mother was quite a handful too. So, Belokin's eyes fell on me instead. After that, Belokin naturally sought out Arioto. He slowly pushed a vial of potion, emanating a bizarre aura toward Arioto. As long as that waste Karashu drank a single drop, then his daughter's medical expenses, and even the debts he owed because of them, would all be resolved. Arioto closed his eyes. Young Master Karashu was the child he raised as his own. He simply couldn't betray his nature to do such things. Belokin's gaze was like a cold blade, stabbing straight into his heart. So you plan to choose someone else's kid over your own flesh and blood daughter? In my past life, this day should have been Arioto's assassination attempt on me, but he still couldn't get past his own conscience, and finally chose to end his own life. Unable to overcome the guilt, Arioto drank the bowl of poisoned soup meant for me and collapsed unconscious on the cold floor. Looking at Arioto standing before me now, my tone didn't hold a hint of warmth. The poison my brother Belokin gave you to kill me. Where are you hiding it? Arioto stiffened all over, his face losing all color instantly. He waved his hands frantically, claiming he didn't know anything about any poison. I stepped closer, asking, do you plan to play dumb until the end to pay for your daughter's treatment? You were already prepared to discard this waste of a person, weren't you? Hearing that, Arioto's face immediately turned pale as death. I sighed softly in my heart. In my past life, this pressure is exactly what pushed him to the end, and it's because of me that he received those orders. Arioto stood frozen on the spot. He thought I'd throw a massive tantrum. But not only did I not do that, I seemed to have completely forgiven him. I reached out, my tone softening slightly. There's one condition for my forgiveness. The scene shifted to the public library of Chingsong Mansion. I stopped walking, turned to Arioto, and gave an order. After facing the world erosion, he transformed into the strongest of his era, Damaris. Even as the biggest failure in Valham history, he was also the most powerful. Back when he wielded that power, the world top elites challenged him one after another. The result was no surprise. Not a single soul could stand against his strength. Afterward, he absorbed all the cursed power, eroding the world, making it his own. In the end, he left behind a secret manual on how to master this force. Too bad that over the ages, parts of the manual have been lost. I never understood before why a powerhouse like Damaris would eventually turn into a mindless monster. Only now do I realize it was because he lost control of that erosive power, causing him to completely snap. In my past life, after being hit by the erosion curse, I used the Black Time skill to weaken the curse influence, then neutralized it with other curses, just to barely survive. Following that same logic, regarding the blood poisoning rampage mentioned in Damaris' manual, if I can steal a curse capable of controlling the frenzy, I can neutralize this power. Once these two forces clash and merge, I can become as powerful as Damaris. Thinking this, I gave Arioldo a firm order. Starting today, no one is allowed to enter the Qingsong mansion. Meanwhile, at the Wilhelm main house, Belogen violently tore the letter in his hand. For the sake of that well-known loser, Arioldo actually dared to reject his proposal. That so-called sword prodigy Charlotte. And that exiled piece of trash. Everything right now is making him incredibly ticked off. And if that woman filthy blood hadn't mixed in, he and Sister Lilith could have secured the direct lineage. Thinking of this, he signaled his men to head to Qingsong Mansion immediately to find out why that old man Arioldo suddenly had a change of heart. But his subordinate looked troubled. Arioldo is holding his great sword, guarding the gate like a literal fortress. Sir, even the head of the house cannot just walk in. Inside the secret library at this moment, I am sitting cross-legged, surrounded by waves of terrifying shadow energy. A moment later, a slow smile creeps onto my face. Am I finally reaching the expert level? In this world, Aura is divided into 4 stages. Aura User, Aura Expert, Aura Master, and Aura Emperor. The first stage, Aura User, is just the beginning of learning to use battle chi. The second stage, Aura Expert, is practically the line between mortals and geniuses. It is also where most people hit their limit. Yet Charlotte, only 2 years older than me, is already nearing the Aura Master stage. Even after being reborn, his talent still catches me off guard. But my eyes quickly sharpen. Even a monster like Charlotte was helpless against the end of the world. After finishing my training, I take the towel and wipe away the sweat, wondering why Arioldo is waiting here specifically for me. Suddenly, Arioldo's expression turns dead serious. Your fiancée, Miss Bianca Hayden-Halls, has just arrived at Qingsong Mansion. My pupils contract instantly. In my mind, that bone-chilling title flashes by. Bianca, the White Devil, the woman who will become a puppet of the World Eroder and personally trigger the apocalypse. The one who defeated one of the world top 10 warriors, a terrifying existence, who made the entire continent tremble single-handedly. Mansion for losers. But what no one knows is that the one recognized by the whole family as a waste right now holds all the secrets of the world's end in his mind. It was a catastrophe that even the Sky generation couldn't stop. So as a regressor, I should be able to prevent all of this from happening. Then I suddenly clenched my fist, a determined light burning in my eyes. It's not a matter of if I can do it. It's that I must do it. If the world is destroyed, I'll perish right along with it. Just as I reached the stairs, a familiar figure made my pupils constrict. The old butler, Arioldo, was bowing to me. In my original memories, the only butler of Qingsong Mansion was also the only person who truly cared for me. But when I was 14, he would secretly poison me under my brother's orders. That was the first time in my life I faced betrayal. Then I fell into deep thought. My half-sister, Charlotte, is a once-in-a-millennium genius of the entire Wilhelm family. At just 15 years old, she already earned the title of Sword Saint. And because of that, the Wilhelm family was able to escape its decline and restore its prestige. But Belokin Wilhelm, from another branch of the family, stared at Charlotte's back with a gloomy gaze. He had to get his hands on the position a first-in-line heir to the Wilhelm family. But the risk of dealing with Charlotte was too high, and her mother was quite a handful too. So, Belokin's eyes fell on me instead. After that, Belokin naturally sought out Arioldo. He slowly pushed a vial of potion, emanating a bizarre aura toward Arioldo. As long as that waste Karashu drank a single drop, then his daughter's medical expenses, and even the debts he owed because of them, would all be resolved. Arioldo closed his eyes. Young Master Karashu was the child he raised as his own. He simply couldn't betray his nature to do such things. Belokin's gaze was like a cold blade, stabbing straight into his heart. So you plan to choose someone else's kid over your own flesh and blood daughter? In my past life, this day should have been Arioldo's assassination attempt on me, but he still couldn't get past his own conscience and finally chose to end his own life. Unable to overcome the guilt, Arioldo drank the bowl of poisoned soup meant for me and collapsed unconscious on the cold floor. Looking at Arioldo standing before me now, my tone didn't hold a hint of warmth. The poison my brother Belokin gave you to kill me. Where are you hiding it? Arioldo stiffened all over, his face losing all color instantly. He waved his hands frantically, claiming he didn't know anything about any poison. I stepped closer, asking, do you plan to play dumb until the end? To pay for your daughter's treatment, you were already prepared to discard this waste of a person. Hearing that, Arioldo's face immediately turned pale as death. I sighed softly in my heart. In my past life, this pressure is exactly what pushed him to the end, and it's because of me that he received those orders. Arioldo stood frozen on the spot. He thought I'd throw a massive tantrum, but not only did I not do that, I seemed to have completely forgiven. I reached out, my tone softening slightly. There's one condition for my forgiveness. The scene shifted to the public library of Qingsong Mansion. I stopped walking, turned to Arioldo, and gave an order. But deep down, I was reeling. Something's wrong. Something is definitely off. I remember the last time we met. Her eyes were like poison daggers. But today, she's like a totally different person. What's even weirder is, she never told me. She liked macadamia nut snacks. Bianca stared at my back, and her chest suddenly tightened. Murderous intent. From me, she felt a flash of murderous intent. That's the kind of aura only someone who's survived life and death combat has. It's definitely not something that whining loser should have. Actually, I don't even remember how I used to treat Bianca, but I clearly remember that cold, distant look on her face. It's exactly how she looked the day she died in front of the North Pavilion. Thinking about that, I immediately forced a bright smile. Bianca, you don't need to be so surprised. I recently made a pact with a god. So both my personality and strength have changed a lot. Bianca nodded slightly, and most of the doubts in her heart vanished. So he made a pact with a god. That explains all these changes. Then, she started overthinking again. He's being so attentive now. Does he want to call off the engagement? After all now, he doesn't need a marriage alliance to prove himself. I froze for a second, as if I'd read her mind. Then, I acted all dejected, saying that I could understand why she wouldn't want to marry someone like me, and that I understood if she wanted to break it off. Seeing me like this, Bianca felt a strange surge of emotion. I'm a direct descendant of the Wilhelm family. I've already gained a god's recognition. So why is my self-esteem still so fragile? A hint of gloom flashed in Bianca's eyes, but her voice was unusually firm. He is. The fact that he's my fiancé will never change. That took me completely by surprise. Staring at her unwavering face, my heart inexplicably swelled. How long had it been since I'd heard words so sincere? Then, I cleared my throat and got straight to the point. I told her I wanted to use my awakened power to take away the snow doll curse from her. Bianca looked at me in disbelief. Was I really planning to transfer the curse to myself? That's a curse even famous curse breakers were helpless against, and I was volunteering to take it? I responded calmly, my voice certain and beyond doubt. If you give it to me, I can grant you any wish you want, even if it's about calling off the engagement. I had a little plan of my own. No feelings involved is actually an advantage. Bianca must be tired of this political marriage too. Trading the engagement for the curse. That's a hell of a deal for me. But Bianca's thoughts drifted elsewhere. She remembered how my family saw me as a failure. She guessed there was a rift between me and the direct bloodline. Maybe I was just tired of everything. So tired that I wanted to throw away my emotions? A mental mage once told her that when someone's spirit reaches its limit, their heart gets sick. They might end it all, or suddenly become a different person. Those moments are dangerous. They're a signal that the end is near. If someone around her became like that, she had to stay by their side. So Bianca couldn't help but wonder, maybe I didn't get a god's blessing, but was actually having a mental breakdown? Bianca suddenly grabbed my hands. It's okay, Karashu. She believed I could overcome this. I didn't need to rely on a curse. I just needed to learn to control my emotions. I looked confused. Bianca had me completely stumped. You seem to have the wrong idea. Bianca wasn't listening to me at all. Instead, she just kept talking to herself, saying she'd be coming to see me often from now on. This left me completely speechless. Don't you actually hate me? Bianca's gaze remained steady. Even if that were true, she said she couldn't abandon someone standing on the edge of a cliff. In an instant, I realized what was happening. Once Bianca sets her mind on something, she'll charge straight ahead to get it done. But she clearly had the wrong idea about me. Thinking this, I secretly activated my skill, Black Hour. A moment later, it quietly wrapped around Bianca's wrist. Then, my body gave a sudden jolt, because the condition to unlock the curse theft was actually to become Bianca's friend. I didn't expect to trigger an extremely rare double lock. This curse was something Bianca was born with. The system already saw it as a part of her body. It's just that this unlock condition, becoming Bianca's friend, that's way harder than just being her fiancé. Besides, Bianca doesn't really have any feelings for me. She's indifferent to pretty much everything. If she goes back to the Hardenhars family, it'll only speed up her transformation into the White Devil. So, I have to keep her close. That way, I can stop her from turning into the White Devil and look for a chance to unlock the curse. With that in mind, I immediately put on a smile. I'm glad to hear you say that, and I also hope to see my fiancé more often. A short while later, I stood by the door, watching Bianca's carriage drive off. As for us visiting each other frequently, we'd need her father's permission first. Bianca's next visit probably won't be for another month. So until then, I need to study more secret techniques to level up. Time flew by. The next day, a carriage pulled up at the entrance, piled high with all sorts of daily supplies. I turned around, and there was Bianca, standing at the mansion door. She greeted me in her usual flat tone. Good morning, Karashu. She had decided to live here at the Green Mansion starting today. I'll be in your care. The following morning, I slowly opened my eyes. As soon as I turned my head, I saw Bianca curled up quietly by the edge of the bed, fast asleep, looking at her small figure. I thought to myself, Bianca slept here again last night. If anyone saw this, they'd definitely get the wrong idea. Even as I stepped onto the training grounds, I was still a bit dazed. Then it finally hit me. Bianca and I have been living together for months now. I remember when she suddenly showed up at the Green Mansion, stating calmly that from that day on, she was moving in. Thinking back, Bianca was always lacking in emotion. Maybe her feelings for her family were just as cold. This numbness might actually be the perfect condition for me to become her friend. Time slipped away, and before I knew it, it was the end of the year. That meant opening day at Lateran Academy was getting closer. That academy was co-founded by the Four Kingdoms and the Empire, specifically to train people to fight against the world erosion. And they only accept students between 15 and 20 years old. In my past life, it produced countless members of the Heavens generation, those guys with their cheat tier skills. The thought made me clench my fists. Thanks to my experience from my past life, I know their weaknesses inside and out. Once I'm enrolled, I can easily steal their skills. But lately, it seems my talent has hit a plateau. Relying only on my ancestors' techniques, I can only reach the beginner level of an expert at best. It looks like I need to steal Bianca's snow doll curse as soon as possible. Later, when I pushed open the training ground doors, sure enough, I saw Bianca sitting there waiting for me. I asked casually, "Are you waiting here today too?" Bianca stood up and answered seriously, "Yes." She said she couldn't let me be all alone. Ever since Bianca moved in, she's been following me around like a baby bird. She even asks before I go to the bathroom. I scratch my head in frustration. Seriously, when is Bianca ever going to see me as just a friend? Bianca, clutching a book, asked if I wanted to go out with her. Not long ago, she received an invitation to the Sanctuary of the Heart. It's an annual social event hosted by the Kingdom of Stalin for minors. Unless there's some special circumstance, every invited noble is required to attend. Memories from my past life flooded back. Before I regressed, I always kept myself locked away in the Green Mansion, so I didn't remember much about this event. But that guy should be there, right? Besides, the attendees at the sanctuary would likely trash-talk Bianca because of my reputation as a loser. Bianca's eyes shimmered. It doesn't matter. Protecting my partner is my duty as your fiancé. I reached out and gently patted her head. I'm not asking you as your fiancé, Bianca. I'm asking how you truly feel. Hearing that, Bianca was suddenly lost for words. Lately, I'd been almost unnaturally kind to her, asking what she wanted for breakfast, holding her hand while reading in the library. This kind of warmth was something she never felt at the Hardenhar's house. Thinking of that, Bianca looked up, her gaze clear and firm. She'd go with me, not as a fiancé, but because she personally wanted to. A few days later, Bianca and I arrived at the banquet hall of the sanctuary. In this world, nobles are respected, primarily because they fight world erosion in place of commoners. But could this bunch, obsessed with partying, really carry the future of the Stalin Kingdom? Welcome, Master Karashu, Wilhelm, and Miss Bianca Harden. Hars. As soon as the hostess made the announcement, the crowd began to whisper. Is that the loser son of the Wilhelm family? I bet the beauty next to him is that cursed daughter of the northern ruler. What a waste of such a pretty face. I heard they've been engaged since they were kids. Two outcasts making a pair. I guess it's a perfect match. I remained expressionless, not giving a damn about these fake nobles' chatter. Associating with them would be the real embarrassment. Just then, a voice called out from the crowd. So this is the little master of the Wilhelm family? My eyes swept over the three speakers. These three would later join the Heavens generation and eventually become the three heroes of Stalin. They were probably only interested in me because of Charlotte. Sure enough, a second later, Charlotte appeared, wearing a striking red dress. She glanced at the nobles, her face full of contempt. This dress is nice, but the guys hitting on me are pathetic. Sanctuary of the Heart. More like a junkyard. Bianca gently tugged at my sleeve, her voice soft but firm. She told me not to worry about what people were saying. I felt a pang in my chest. Bianca was the one being gossiped about, yet she was worried about me. Right then, the hostess's voice rang out again. Please welcome the dear Lord Darlin Danfilian. The newcomer was indeed Danfilian, an eccentric genius among alchemists, the biggest show-off in the castle. And the key reason I decided to attend the sanctuary. I remember in the world before I regressed. My naked body was covered in eerie black runes, like they were being strangled by dark vines. The next moment, an excited voice suddenly exploded in my ear. This guy's entire body is covered in curse marks. What the hell did he go through to end up like this? Then, Danfilian leaned in to scrutinize those runes. He was muttering to himself. Looks like an eroding type curse. If I use this formula with that reagent, it should do the trick. Saying that, Danfilian spread his arms, flashing a manic smile. Well then, let's get started. My face was forced to one side. Even though I struggled with all I had, my mouth was being squeezed so hard that all I could manage were muffled screams. That was my first meeting with the man known as the world's greatest alchemist. The scene shifts back to the banquet hall of the sanctuary. Taking advantage of the moment, Danfilian was distracted by the crowd. I picked up a plate of fine pastries from the long table and handed it to Bianca. I told her to wait for me here, with her mouth full. Bianca gave a muffled grunt in response. As I turned to leave, I happened to lock eyes with a probing Danfilian. He felt like he'd seen that boy somewhere before. Danfilian's eyes suddenly lit up. You look a lot like Charlotte Wilhelm. Don't tell me you're her little brother? A provocative smirk played on my lips. Well then, is the great alchemist actually interested in me? Danfilian's smile instantly froze. He narrowed his eyes slightly, his tone turning cold. What a cocky little brat. Since you've managed to catch my eye, you'd better be ready. In a private room off the banquet hall, Danfilian suddenly asked with his back turned to me. Little master of the Wilhelm family, how old are you now? I lowered my eyes, my voice calm, but filled with undeniable conviction. 13. I could probably guess why Danfilian was asking that. Because of the memories from my previous life, I always give off a very mature vibe. Danfilian raised a sword, then tossed another one toward me. My pupils shrank. I hurriedly threw up my arms, barely blocking the incoming long sword with the hilt. Even though a wave of numbing pain shot through my arms, I grit my teeth. Gripping the sword with both hands, my blade clashed violently with Danfilian's. In the next heartbeat, I swung my sword with all my might. A blue aura carved a sharp arc in the air. Danfilian parried with a grunt, his face a mask of disbelief. I thought you were a good-for-nothing loser? I kept a straight face, but my mind was racing. I might look frail, but I haven't missed a single day of training. Still, brute force won't work on a scholar. I need to shake him up with something he actually cares about. Then, I suddenly lowered my voice, speaking through the gaps in our clashing blades. Regarding your research on introverted synthesis curses, I wouldn't mind giving you a hand. Those words made Danfilian's pupils contract instantly. What could a brat like you possibly know about alchemy to dare suggest a partnership? I dodged his attack again with a steady foot, knowing full well that I'd just hit him where it matters. I went on the offensive again, using other curses to neutralize the curse of the world eroder. This is a problem that curse breakers haven't been able to solve to this day. If you want to be a top-tier alchemist, you have to prove this research is feasible. Am I wrong? If you're willing, I'll help you finish your research. Using my ability to steal curses, Danfilian was instantly hit with a wave of excitement. His eyes were full of pure fanaticism. An ability to steal curses? But you're clearly someone who hasn't even mastered an aura yet. If what you're saying is true, then, well, this is a golden opportunity to prove both curse control and synthesis theory at the same time. Danfilian suddenly leaned in close. What's the catch? Or are you asking me to be your boyfriend? I cut him off with a look of pure disgust. There's a high chance I'll end up with several curses in the future. So, I need you to develop some drugs that can lessen the backlash from them. As I spoke, my thoughts drifted to the past. Relying on the stealing ability alone isn't nearly enough. Even the Heavens generation, with their god-tier skills, couldn't stop the world from being destroyed in the end. A former failure like me has to use every dirty trick in the book. Whether it's drugs or anything that makes me stronger, I'm taking it. Meanwhile, Danfilian was reminiscing about Charlotte's overwhelming, genius-level presence. It seems these Wilhelm siblings are both proving to be incredibly interesting to him. Then, he suddenly shifted gears, asked if I was going to the newly established Latrin Academy. I grinned. Isn't the answer obvious? That academy is packed with abilities for me to steal. It's basically a stage custom-made for me. After saying that, I looked at Danfilian quietly. Besides that, I have one more favor to ask. You've heard of the color shift disease, right? That incurable illness where the skin turns black and blue, eventually leading to death. I want you to create a cure for it. The smile on Danfilian's face instantly froze. Do I not understand what incurable means? Even for the kingdom's finest alchemist. It was impossible, I replied softly. But you eventually did it. It just took a long time. Once you've got the cure ready, come find me at the Green Mansion. Before parting ways with Danfilian, I asked one more thing. I've been curious about something. You actually like my sister Charlotte, don't you? After he confirmed it, I continued. Then why did you say you were available? And suggest I be your boyfriend? Danfilian folded his hands, a mysterious smile on his face. Master Karashu, you're still such an innocent child. Truth is, he likes boys too. I went stiff, completely shocked into silence. I yanked my hand away from Danfilian and bolted out of there. Just as I reached the banquet hall entrance, I stopped dead in my tracks. A stranger was currently gripping Bianca's wrist tightly. In an instant, I shot through the crowd like lightning, landing a brutal flying kick right across the man's face. My voice was cold as ice. Who the hell gave you permission to touch what's mine? My gaze was freezing. As I stepped closer, 1 inch at a time, you dare lay a hand on a 12-year-old child? Do you really have such sick tastes? You piece of trash. The man scrambled back in a panic. He pointed at the crowd and shouted, explaining that he was only acting on Princess Claudia's orders to take Bianca away. The murmurs in the crowd reached a fever pitch. Orders from the second princess? My pupils contracted sharply. So it was Claudia Stalin. Stalin, the woman most skilled at political manipulation in the royal family. My gaze slowly shifted, landing on a small, thin figure in the corner. Bianca carried the blood of the northern ruler, yet she was shunned by all the nobles because of her curse. The princess who only associated with loyal servants. Bianca. There's definitely a conspiracy behind this. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I scanned the shadows. Several noble figures were secretly watching everything unfold. A blurry figure emerged from the darkness, wearing a twisted smile. Suddenly, I remembered something. Yannick's Glazer. That guy who keeps pestering my sister, Charlotte. After being publicly defeated here at the sanctuary, he utterly loathed her. Yet, he couldn't shake his admiration for her, knowing he couldn't beat Charlotte. He decided to target me, her brother. I couldn't help but scoff. What a pathetic plan. What right does he have to drag Bianca into this? I stepped forward and spoke slowly. Take me to him, but not to the princess. Take me to Yannick's. Then I turned to Bianca. My mind filled with questions, with the memories of my past life. I knew Yannick's was the one behind the scenes. But 12-year-old Bianca couldn't possibly have known that. So why did she refuse the princess's order? Thinking of this, I looked Bianca in the eye and asked why she didn't obey the princess. Bianca slowly lowered her gaze. It was because I had told her to wait for me. Thump. My pupils contracted sharply. I froze in my tracks. Then, I reached out and gently stroked Bianca's hair. Good job, Bianca. The moment we pushed open the doors, a boy walked toward us, stretching, with ash-gray hair and fluffy beast ears. It was Barak Hogmar of the Tiger Tribe, a highly skilled dual swordsman. Though his personality was always unpredictable, I stated flatly that I was here to see Yannick's. Barak smiled and pointed deep into the palace, saying Yannick's had been waiting inside for a long time. I felt a slight surge of annoyance. I didn't want to deal with this troublesome guy, but I ran into him anyway. Suddenly, Barak grabbed my shoulder and suggested, how about we have a real fight to settle things? I answered coldly, trying to avoid trouble at the sanctuary. Private fights between nobles are strictly forbidden. But Barak leaned in close to my face, his tone dripping with blatant provocation. He said he'd fought Charlotte before. Since I'm her brother, I should be able to fight too, right? Though looking at me, I seemed way weaker than Charlotte. I sneered inwardly. The rumors were true. In the fight against Charlotte, Barak performed even better than Yannick's. Even among top-tier fighters, Barak was a cut above. Not to mention that unpredictable, beast-like combat instinct. I really didn't want to tangle with him before seeing Yannick's. But his beastly slitted pupils were full of unmistakable bloodlust. It didn't look like he was going to let me off easy. The next moment, my hand instantly caught Barak's incoming punch. Barak looked completely stunned, obviously not expecting me to catch his strike so easily. My gaze turned icy, and I put all my strength into my arm, slamming him into the ground like a piece of trash. Before he could react, I ruthlessly stepped on his back. Then, I followed up with a heavy punch. Barak collapsed on the floor, clutching his stomach in pain. I stood up straight and slowly exhaled. My eyes returned to normal, as if that violent power had never been there. Barak struggled to get up. Karashu, you didn't hold back at all, did you? I rubbed my neck and corrected him. You were the one who provoked me first. My gaze darkened. I glanced instinctively at his wobbling frame. More importantly, can you even stand up? The smile on Barak's face instantly froze. A second later, his legs gave out, and he fell straight backward. With a dull thud, Barak passed out cold right then and there. Bianca walked over quickly. She asked me what I had actually done. I turned to her, my voice calm. I explained that I used a secret technique of the Wilhelm family. It's an ancient technique created by Wilhelm exiles. It can unleash maximum destructive power within the shortest distance. Under certain conditions, it can even penetrate armor and strike the internal organs directly. It was the only secret manual recovered before the Green Mansion was burned down in my past life. In that life, it was thanks to this that I managed to crawl back from the brink of death so many times. A moment later, Yannick's looked down at the fallen Barak, a hint of surprise in his voice. Unbelievable. The legendary loser actually managed to take down Barak. I exhaled in frustration. You had him stand guard here just to test me, didn't you? And you used the second princess to lure me out. So naturally, I had to come see the mastermind in person. Yannick studied me with great interest. So how did you figure it out? It's actually quite strange. Judging by the aura you're giving off right now, it's completely different from the rumors I've heard. I paused deliberately. Or rather, you're the one who started the rumors about me being a failure. But if you lose to me today, to this famous loser, young master, I smirked with confidence. Then I'm afraid all those rumors will have to be rewritten. Am I right, Yannick's? Yannick's Glazer. From Latrin Academy to the founding of the Heavens Generation, we walked side by side for a long time. People called us friends, but I know this guy far too well. He only gets close to people for personal gain. And being around a person like that always involves the filthiest schemes. Flashbacks from my past life flooded my mind. I remember a mission with the Heavens Generation. I was struggling, screaming in despair, begging Yannick's to come and save me. But in that moment, Yannick's only had one thought. If the higher-ups in the Heavens Generation found out that he'd fallen into a trap, leading to the total wipeout of the execution squad, especially now, when the internal power struggle was already fierce, he'd definitely be kicked out of the organization because of this incident. But if he was the only survivor, no one would ever know the truth behind the disaster. Yannick slowly stood up from the shadows, his smile turning even gentler. He said he'd pinned everything on me. Everyone hated me anyway. so the whole thing would likely just be swept under the rug. He told me he was truly grateful from the bottom of his heart, grateful that I had stayed by his side until my very last breath. I just let out a roar. When have you ever actually treated me like a friend? You only got close to me because of Charlotte from the start. Am I wrong? You've been out of it all day today. It's because Charlotte is getting married. Yannick suddenly stood up and snapped. All the gentleness on his face vanished, so that's why he hates me. I clearly don't have any powers, yet my intuition is sickeningly accurate, and I always love exposing the truth without caring about the fallout. If Charlotte really gets married, then this fake relationship of ours ends right here today. Yannick stopped in his tracks. He turned back and glanced over. But isn't this better? Charlotte wouldn't want to hold her own wedding and her brother's funeral on the same day. Just as I was about to lose my balance, a hand suddenly grabbed me, pulling me back from the edge of the fall. That person was Arthur. In that moment, it became the turning point for us becoming teammates, but it also opened the curtain to another misfortune. Anyway, with Arthur's intervention, Yannick was eventually expelled from the Azure generation. But seeing him again now, he doesn't seem to have changed at all. Yannick's voice pulled me back to reality. He thinks the way I talk and my face are just like Charlotte's. Purple-black energy instantly surged around my body. Don't just go around saying my sister's name. If you think I look a lot like her, then congrats, you're not wrong. Like my sister, I never backed down from a challenge. The next second, a fist wrapped in dark purple energy tore through the air instantly. I threw a heavy punch at Yannick. But at the very moment I landed, several thick vines suddenly shot out from the shadows, tightly binding my limbs and waist. The force was brutal, slamming me hard onto the ground. I braced myself with one hand, barely stabilizing my stance. Seeing this, Yannick let out a light chuckle. Seems like that's all you've got. Crush, you should use a weapon. With that, he immediately waved his hand. This is the Glazer family's secret technique, using aura to strengthen and control plants, and even using recovery skills to multiply them, making up for the limits of the technique's consumption. I casually grabbed a vine wrapped around my arm, then snapped it with a burst of strength, holding this piece of vine in my hand. It felt like a handy short club. Did you suggest I'd be better off with a weapon? Then I'll use your own wood against you. A cold smile curled on Yannick's lips. Then I'll use this crappy branch to block his move. Try me. Before he could finish, countless sharp vines shot out from every direction. I pivoted quickly, swinging the short club in my hand. A series of afterimages accurately struck down every piercing incoming vine. Yannick's smile instantly froze on his face. I had actually dodged all of them. How could this even happen? If it were a genius like Charlotte, fine. But have I awakened some kind of heavenly eye ability? Even if he racked his brain, he'd never know. To him, I'm a natural-born nemesis, because before I returned, I had already seen through his abilities. Besides, I was already sick of those tricks back then. I paused for a moment, intentionally hitting his sore spot. Yannick, you must be thinking about Charlotte again, aren't you? Hearing this, Yannick's face turned grim. He slammed his fist onto the ground, warning me about the way I talk, telling me not to be so disrespectful. The next moment, a massive wooden arm burst from the ground, crashing down on me with world-shattering force. Suddenly, Charlotte's scream came from behind the door. The moment she rushed out, the massive creature already blotted out the sun. If I take a direct hit, I'll probably be crushed into pulp. But I slowly lowered my head as the secret manual from the Jingsong mansion flashed through my mind. In his later years, there was only one short sentence, yet it recorded his life's work of swordsmanship. That technique requires a state of 5-in-1 unity, something short-term training could never reach. But I've been pushed to the brink countless times by the curse, struggling repeatedly on the edge of life and death. I somehow brute-forced my way into mastering this ancestor's secret strike. The sword is me, and I am the sword. Without a weapon, my will becomes the sharpest blade. With that thought, I slowly raised my hand. An aura of absolute purity condensed in my palm. A blinding white light from the blade suddenly shot toward the sky, like a blade breaking the dawn. It sliced straight toward that massive fist. The next moment, the fist was split right down the middle. Cracks spread all the way through the giant's entire body. The sword's light was unstoppable, shattering that towering giant into a million pieces scattered in the air. Charlotte and Bianca, who had just arrived, stood at the door. They stared at the scene in shock. Right then, they almost forgot to breathe. Yannick was full of disbelief, as if he were seeing something impossible. I slowly stepped out from the dust. The dark purple energy had already faded, but my gaze remained sharp. Don't get too ahead of yourself from now on. Yannick, got it. You piece of trash. At this point, Yannick didn't have a shred of his previous arrogance left. His eyes were hollow, like a shell that had lost its soul. As for me, I slumped over in exhaustion. Damn it. I planned to save some strength for later, to slowly plunder the techniques from that house. But that move from the ancestor's manual drained almost every bit of energy in my body. My limbs felt as heavy as a ton of bricks. Just then, I heard soft footsteps behind me. A pair of arms gently caught and supported me. It was Bianca, her cheek pressed tightly against my back. A bone-chilling, yet strangely steady cold magic slowly seeped from her palms into my body. My body suddenly convulsed, and I couldn't help but throw my head back and scream in pain. Seeing this, Danphy, Leon's voice carried a rare sense of panic. He rushed over quickly, and without a word, he hoisted my unconscious body onto his shoulder. Meanwhile, the banquet hall behind us had already turned into chaos. What was that noise just now? I heard that the failure From the Wilhelm family defeated Yenix. Damphy Leon listened closely, a playful smirk tugging at his lips. Rumors were spreading faster than he thought. He looked down at my sleeping face, his eyes darkening slightly. I really don't know if this kid is incredibly brave or just has no brain at all. But either way, by the time he wakes up, the entire Stalin noble circle will remember the name Crush Wilhelm. He looked up at the night sky and muttered under his breath, I can't let him die before I've finished the research on the curse synthesis. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. I spent day and night in the training hall refining my skills. Now, I've finally and completely shaken off the side effects of that move. If I had forced myself to use that ancestor's secret technique repeatedly and pushed myself over the edge back then, my fate would have been even worse than Yannick's. In the carriage on the way back that day, I was out cold for a full day. If I hadn't regained consciousness halfway, I could have at least finished the groundwork for plundering Yannick's skills. Actually, I had long since thought of 2 ways to seize skills. One is the standard way of unlocking my innate skill, Black Hour. The other is by leading my opponents to doubt themselves, making them from the bottom of their hearts. As for Yannick's, I always planned on using that second method. It's actually much simpler by comparison. You just need to crush your opponent with overwhelming dominance. Since I one-shot the secret family technique he was so proud of, his faith in his own skills has already completely shattered. Being steamrolled by someone he considered trash, Yannick's is bound to start doubting himself sooner or later. I gripped my sword, certain of one thing. Even if it takes time to manifest, Yannick's life-saving recovery skill will eventually be mine for the taking. There's only 1 year left before entering Lacheln Academy. To catch up to, or even surpass those so-called geniuses, I intended to spend every waking moment training. But then Alioto's figure suddenly appeared at the courtyard gate. Master Crush, Lord Belojin, has just arrived at the Jingsong mansion. I couldn't help but let out a cold smirk. Is my dear older brother finally losing his patience? Thinking of that, I slumped directly onto a seat in the living room. Fine, let him in. As soon as Alioto left, Bianca walked over with a glass of water. She furrowed her brows slightly, noting that I reeked of sweat. I blinked, reflexively pulling up my collar to take a sniff. I guess I've spent so much time around the stench of world corruption that my nose has gone numb, but it makes sense. When you're pushing your aura to the limit to refine your body, all the impurities and waste get flushed out along with the sweat. Bianca looked cold, but she was being quite stubborn. She insisted I should clean up before seeing Belojin. I waved her off, totally indifferent. No need. I'll be working up a sweat again soon anyway, so washing up now is just a waste of time. Bianca immediately took half a step back, looking completely repulsed. She asked me not to get any closer to her until then. I was stunned and couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Bianca, are you giving orders to your fiancé now? I didn't expect you to grow such a backbone. Watching her look so flustered, a wave of realization washed over me. Back in my past life, drowned in destruction and struggle, I never had a life this lighthearted. The people who fought by my side, especially that guy Arthur, if they saw how casual I am now, they'd probably just glare at me with those intense, cold eyes. He was always a hero who stood on the front lines, never letting his guard down for a second. So where is he now? And what is he doing? Just then, a cold voice came from outside the door. Looks like you're having a great time with your fiancé. Crush. I turned around to look at the man standing in the doorway, Belojin. Wilhelm, my third brother, whose ambitions were plain as day. His gaze pierced through me like an ice blade. Are those rumors about you beating Yannick's actually true? The old me couldn't even follow his orders. But now I can calmly face him down. I let out a chuckle and took the initiative to change the subject. Since you're supposed to be so busy, brother, how do you have the time to visit a remote place like Jingsong Mansion? Belojin froze for a split second, clearly not expecting me to question him back. I tilted my head, my tone dripping with provocation. I heard Lacheln Academy doesn't care about family status and only admits based on performance. Is that true? If so, you better start preparing. Belojin's face instantly turned livid. Even the strongest empire fears the Wilhelm family of Stalin, and as the legitimate heir, he shouldn't even have to bother with. A contemptuous smirk curled on his lips as he spoke. Don't think beating a loser like Yannick's gives you the right to get cocky. I just tilted my head, feigning confusion. From a normal person's perspective, isn't it only natural to worry about exams? Belojin cleared his throat and quickly changed the subject. He was actually there to deliver the family's orders, stating that I was to head to Mount Grillik to stop the world corruption there. My pupils shrank instantly. Family corruption missions, those clearly aren't mandatory until you're 15. Belojin's gaze was full of deliberate pressure. He told me I didn't need to worry about it. He would accompany me as my guardian, since his little brother could beat Yannick's. Surely he wouldn't back down from a small task like this. I saw right through his plan in an instant. First, he tests my strength. Then he tries to get me under his thumb. With that in mind, I chose to face it head on. Then let's head out right now. Compared to the peaceful routine I've had lately, I'm much more used to dealing with the corruption. Even if this is a trap, I've already figured out my escape plan. Just then, Bianca hurried over clutching her books, asking where I was going. I gave her a brief explanation. Bianca was immediately confused, sending a 13-year-old kid to stop the world corruption? That sounds completely ridiculous. Belojin's expression turned incredibly sour. You're just a cursed commoner, How dare you speak up? This is Wilhelm family business. I immediately pulled Bianca behind me, protecting her firmly. She is my fiancée. Surely my generous brother won't pick a fight with a 12-year-old girl. Belojin gave a cold snort at that, then turned around and stormed off. I smiled and rubbed Bianca's head, praising her for a job well done. Bianca held her books with a dazed look, explaining she hadn't really done anything. My hand rested gently on her hair. It's okay if you didn't realize it. Bianca looked up, her clear eyes full of sincerity. She begged me to make sure I took care of myself. I turned around and gripped the sword at my waist. I wish you the best, then. As for Bianca, after arriving at the destination, I realized Mount Grillick was nothing like it used to be. What should have been majestic peaks were now covered in massive swamps. This place had been classified as a 3-star First Dimension Corruption Zone. The so-called world corruption is when reality is eroded by the First Dimension, causing corrupted life forms to roam everywhere. If the erosion goes too far, the entire area becomes part of the First Dimension. I looked around, my tone far too calm for a kid who just arrived. Has the purification squad not moved in yet? A knight responded, adding, once the local boss is dealt with, the purification squad will act immediately, and Lord Belojin is a high-level expert. Taking down a corrupted boss would be a piece of cake for him. But what no one knew was that I had another purpose for coming here. To test out a temporary solution for my berserk state. While thinking, I raised my sword and swung it straight ahead. A massive beetle monster was instantly sliced into pieces. One of the knights couldn't help but ask out of curiosity if I had handled world corruption before. I lifted my chin, my tone full of pride. I'm only 13. It would be weirder if I had experience with this. Nearby, Belojin's veins were bulging on his forehead. This useless brat. He just stepped into the corruption zone, and he's already acting this arrogant? When he first came here, at just past 15, his pride was almost completely destroyed. So why did I get to? Then the failure of the Wilhelm family might very well have been him. Thinking of this, he spoke up calmly, stating that this was likely a 3-star corrupted lord capable of maintaining its body on its own. So for the next move, we have to be much more cautious. The knights' faces turned pale instantly, and they froze in their tracks. I watched their backs, thinking to myself, it seems it doesn't matter if I'm involved or not. I should just focus on what I need to do. But a second later, my eyes widened. Since mastering the family's secret arts, my perception has far surpassed what it used to be. I can see through the surface of reality and directly witness the source of the world corruption. That mass of filthy energy floating in the air. That was my target all along. At that thought, I threw my head back and swallowed it without a second thought. The next second, my eyes became bloodshot. Immediately after, I coughed up a spray of fresh blood. The knights rushed over to the bank, asking if something was wrong with me. Even Belojin stepped forward quickly, a rare hint of concern in his voice. He thought it was because it was my first time, and I was putting too much pressure on myself. So if I needed to, he said I could head back to the shelter. I slowly looked up, telling him I was fine. Just as the manual on extreme blood and corrosive poison stated, I tried to forcibly merge my own aura with the corruption energy, then focused on observing the flow of that energy. As expected, it would be like a river, endlessly circulating and immortal. The moment the corruption was inhaled, it was swept up by this massive flow, engulfed and consumed until fully merged, turning into a brand new, ineradicable color of reality. The next second, my pupils were dyed blood red. Then I forced myself to stand tall, my whole body trembling from the surge of power. So these are the remnants of power after going berserk? I looked at my blood-stained, uncontrollably shaking hands. My sanity was teetering in the face of this destructive force. Maybe it's time to use that technique. The Wilhelm family's secret library was permanently sealed after that incident, causing that forbidden art to be thought lost to history. Until one day, a blind member of the family accidentally found the library, but because he was blind, he couldn't read the scrolls inside. He had no choice but to shut the doors of the secret library once again. But by doing that, no one else like him would ever appear again. So, he secretly kept one manual for himself, and that is the forbidden power I'm about to use right now. Suddenly, a massive, blue aura erupted all around me. This is an extrasensory perception based on aura, a sixth sense that can perceive everything through spirit. For now, it only extends to my fingertips, but it's enough to control everything around me. I slowly raised my hand to wipe the blood from my lip, but no matter what, this is just a temporary fix. After all, absorbing corruption energy always carries the risk of losing control. When that time comes, I'll still need help from Bianca's snow doll curse. The next second, I spun around, cold sweat instantly soaking my back. Up in the air, a massive hunk of flesh was squirming wildly. Right in front of me, a twisted human face suddenly emerged. The next second, those eyes snapped open. Then that mass of flesh slowly shifted, finally taking the shape of a man's silhouette. Belojin immediately shouted. Realizes this is the 3-star corrupted lord, the thousand-faced demon. The accompanying family knights instantly drew their swords, their expressions grim as they faced a formidable foe. At the same time, blazing flames engulfed Belojin's body, leaving only a pair of cold eyes, scanning silently through the sea of fire. The apprentice knights nearby looked up with eyes full of fanatic awe. Lord Belagin's flame magic is as breathtaking as ever. It's not just flashy. Its destructive power is absolutely devastating. This skill, it can burn everything it touches to ashes. My eyes, however, were locked onto that burning cocoon. It was a haunting memory etched into my very bones. Ignis. In my past life, it was this very skill that completely incinerated my ancestral weapon. Back then, Belogin slammed his foot down, pinning me into the dirt. He roared at me from above, with crushing arrogance. Do you see the gap between us now? He didn't have time to waste on trash like me. In my past life, Belogin was a complete and utter psychopath. But now, I sincerely hope you haven't changed one bit. With that, a sick fire of revenge ignited in my eyes. At the same time, a dense purple aura suddenly exploded from within me. Before I could even speak, on the battlefield not far away, a knight let out a blood-curdling scream. His body contorted wildly under the corruption energy. His facial features began to melt until his entire face turned into a smooth, fiery slab of flesh. Another knight pointed at that thousand-faced demon in sheer terror. I didn't expect a facial curse. The best thing they can do is retreat from the battlefield immediately. After all, if even veteran knights struggle against this curse, sending these rookies to hold the line is just throwing their lives away. On the other side, Belogin suddenly drew his sword. He didn't back down an inch. Instead, cloaked in flames, he charged straight at the thousand-faced demon. Fire instantly enveloped his body, turning him into a blazing meteor. Crashing down from midair, the monster opened its massive maw in a silent roar, but it didn't even have a chance to dodge. The next second, the monster was reduced to ash. Amidst a burst of flames, the ground shook violently. Belogin stood firm with his sword, roaring at the fleeing soldiers. Don't any of you back down. He would stay out front to bridge the gap. The remaining knights were left speechless. Then, they erupted into wild cheers. As expected of Lord Belogin of the Wilhelm family, Belogin scanned his surroundings. He wondered where that kid had disappeared to. Had the corruption monsters swallowed him whole? Meanwhile, I was hunkered down behind a heavy rock. I clearly saw a single tear of blood fall from the corner of the monster's eye. That is definitely not normal. The next second, the thousand-faced demon's body began to convulse. Countless blurred human faces twisted frantically within it. Black slime poured from the eye sockets of those faces. Belogin realized things were going south fast and dove down like a streak of fire. Those twisted faces shattered under the impact, but a suffocating sense of pressure crawled up through the ground. Belogin's face turned pale. This overwhelming evil energy, he had to kill it before the mutation was complete. He raised his flaming sword and ordered the knights behind him. Concentrate fire. Just as the words left his mouth, the demon, he leaped into the air, his flaming blade turning into a finishing strike. But the kill he expected never happened. His sword was stopped dead in midair by an invisible dark force. The clash of flames and curse energy let out a piercing, bone-shaking roar. Belogin was shaken to his core. An attack infused with aura effects actually got blocked. He steadied himself and roared at the knights again. While it hasn't fully mutated, we have to go all out. But this time, there was no response from behind him. Belogin whipped around, his face turning white as a sheet. The knights behind him were all frozen in place, motionless, as if their souls had been completely ripped out. Belogin let out a furious scream. We are knights of Wilhelm. Are you really going to let a little curse scare you to death? Yet, still, not a single person answered. The knights' expressions were hollow, like puppets being controlled. Belogin finally realized what was happening. It's a curse. This was never just a normal corruption from the start. And because of his own arrogance, the entire knight unit had been wiped out. A moment later, nothing but pure terror remained in Belogin's eyes. The once invincible top enforcer of the Wilhelm family. Now his face was a mask of total despair. A hollow phantom whispered in his ear, daring him with a cursed allure. It's because you're an idiot. Your sister, Charlotte, left you in the dust a long time ago. You're just a bluffing piece of trash, riding on your family's name. The whole unit died because of your ego. Yet all you can think about is saving your own skin. A failure like you deserves to die. As the words faded, the thousand-faced demon's claws lunged down with a chilling aura. Just as the claws were about to tear him apart, a faint green light suddenly flashed. Belogin's body was knocked aside, barely dodging the blow. He struggled to open his eyes, and the person he saw standing there was me. The trash brother he always looked down on. His voice was full of disbelief, demanding to know how I got here. I met his gaze calmly, telling him I'd been hiding in the shadows, watching everything on the battlefield. The moment the thousand-faced demon attacked, I took advantage of its blocked vision to pull you out of the fight. Belogin braced himself against the ground to stand up, but as soon as he moved his leg, he collapsed right back down. I couldn't help but let out a snicker, my tone dripping with blatant mockery. In that state, you can't even gather enough aura to stabilize your body. So, are you really sure you don't need my help, Brother Belogin? Belogin forced his shaky body to stand upright, claiming he didn't need help from a piece of trash like me. Right as he finished, his whole body shivered. His eyes scanned the rain-soaked woods in pure panic. Is the thousand-faced demon still nearby? My voice rose slowly. It's actually been quite a while since I carried you out of there. But after walking for so long, we still haven't made it out of these woods. That's enough to prove that this corruption domain has completely sealed itself off. In other words, if we don't kill that monster, we're never getting out of here. I spoke up once more, telling him I have an ultimate move that Charlotte personally taught me. Before the final blow, back at the Holy Land of Stars, the reason I was able to crush Yannix so easily was because of this. Belajan's voice carried a hint of a final struggle. If we use that move, do I really think we can kill that thousand-faced demon? My answer didn't waver for a second. Better to risk it all in a desperate fight than to stay here and be toyed with like a monster shadow. Even if you don't believe in me, you should at least trust Charlotte's strength, right? Belajan let out a bitter, strained smile. Charlotte, that guy is definitely a genius, no doubt about it, trying to strike into the unknown with his sword. But if we fail, both of us are going to die in this hellhole. A slow smile spread across my face. Relax, I can promise you. We're both getting out of here alive. The thousand-faced demon's presence felt tighter and tighter. A cold, cursed aura mixed with the rain, clinging to my skin. My voice grew tense. I turned to Belajan beside me and asked him if he was ready. Belajan looked down, and a burst of flames suddenly erupted from his palm. The arrogance was gone from his eyes as he looked up. Then let's do this. With that, he transferred part of his flame power into me for the time being. I took a deep breath. My whole body exploded with a brilliant blue flame. I closed my eyes, letting the rain slide down my jaw. The star god and all my remaining power were poured into the edge of this blade. Belajan was completely frozen in place. He had never seen anyone refine their focus to such a degree. It was as if everything around him had turned into a void, and there was that pure aura swirling around me. A source of power he hadn't touched in his entire life. Before, when I asked him to combine the Ignis flame with Charlotte's secret art, he had completely looked down on the idea, thinking it was just the ramblings of a fool. But the power being shown right now was at a height he couldn't reach. Even if he gave it his all, he watched the aura burning on my body. That flame was purer than any time he had ever summoned Ignis. I, the younger brother he always saw as a failure, now possessed power that easily crushed his own. Belajan was instantly swallowed by endless frustration. He had lost everything and was running for his life in shame. If I'm the one who ends up killing the thousand-faced demon, wouldn't that prove that he's even weaker than me? A certified loser? Before he could drown in self-doubt, I had already leaped up. The flaming sword merged violently with his Ignis flame and slammed into the demon's cursed body. With a massive boom, the demon was completely consumed by fire. That body, covered in countless human faces, showed absolute terror before turning into ashes in the light. Sunlight pierced the clouds, hitting the scorched earth. I looked up and turned toward the distraught Belajan, signaling that the chaos was finally over. But Belajan suddenly let out a twisted smile, and that smile was a mix of desperate hatred and madness. It's just over, just like that? He gripped his sword tight, a low growl coming from his throat. The next second, he swung directly at my neck. I immediately blocked with my own sword, but on his blade, there wasn't a trace of Ignis power. Belajan himself stared at the blade in shock, his pupils shrinking in disbelief. Why couldn't he use his Ignis anymore? My cold voice cut right through his despair. I should thank you, Brother Belajan. Thank you for always being so stupid and never learning how to adapt Ignis. The conditions for plundering are actually quite simple. First, I had to get Belajan to voluntarily give up partial control of his power. Then, I had to find a way to make him admit in his heart that someone else is stronger. And finally, that moment when his pride completely shattered. That is how I successfully took his flame skills and made them entirely my own. Now, Belajan is wailing like a dying monster. I looked down at him collapsed on the ground, my voice chilled with a cold edge. At first, I really wanted us to be brothers. But no matter what I did, you only ever saw me as that piece of trash you could trample on. When you used Ignis to crush my dignity back then, I was curled up on the ground just like you are now, struggling in pain. I slowly lift my gaze toward the clear sky. What an ironically beautiful day. Perfect for today's activities. By the time I returned to the Wilhelm main house, news of the Night Order's total annihilation had already spread. They reclassified this erosion event as a 5-star difficulty, and the testimony I fabricated became the truth everyone believed. Belajan heroically sacrificed himself to cover me, ultimately trading his life to slay the thousand-faced demon and protecting the final glory of House Wilhelm. I watched this absurd scene from outside the door. In the wake of this expedition, I gained far more than I had imagined. I've fully adapted to the extreme blood-toxic environment, and my sixth sense can now suppress the loss of control over erosion powers. The Ignis I plundered merged with the world erosion power, granting me a dark force capable of burning everything to the ground. The only lingering concern is the investigation at the erosion site. Even though they haven't uncovered the truth yet, the root of all this is the world erosion itself. The master of the eroders, though long sunk into an eternal dream, can only rely on the eyes of his minions to peer into this world. But once those undying ones start moving, it means I've encountered the undying's claws sooner than expected. I lightly knock on the door in front of me. The moment it opens, my pupils snap into focus. Standing before me is Sapphira, a rank 4 investigator from the Erosion Bureau. A new type of mark on his neck catches my eye instantly. Seeing this, I let out a confident smile, stating that I want to make a deal with him. Undying 1. I will personally wipe that undying mark off you. Sapphira tilts his head slightly. The confusion on his face vanishes instantly, replaced by a strange look of knowing everything. His figure slowly blends into the darkness behind him. So, I am the returner after all. He was originally looking for something else, but he didn't expect to stumble upon such a huge surprise. I suddenly recall a memory from my past life. I remember when I was acting on Arthur's orders, attempting to steal August's undying essence. But in the end, it was a total failure. The reason he created so many clones and projections was just a smokescreen because his real body was cursed, making it impossible to move. But even if I had a chance to do it all over, it would still be impossible to complete because the requirement to steal the undying essence is to become an existence even more powerful than the undying August. Sapphira's lips curl into a ghastly arch. It seems I really am that returner. He planned to track another target, but ran right into this unexpected windfall. My brow furrows. What on earth makes you think I'm a returner? Sapphira's laughter grows even more distorted because a normal person would never dare propose a deal to someone like him. Only a returner trapped in a time loop would have the guts to try such a suicide mission. He was an existence beyond time, deathless and eternal. If I really wanted to kill him, it just wasn't possible. So from now on, for a second, insisting that it wasn't a lie, because my ability is called plunder. I don't just steal skills. I can even strip away your immortality. And for the first time, a look of shock flashed in Sapphira's eyes. I clenched my fists, my knuckles cracking. For hundreds of years, you've been ramping up the erosion levels, and your clones have been appearing all over the world. Just like Sapphira, who currently works at the Erosion Bureau. And you've been doing it all to find someone who can finally kill you. Now, the person who can steal your undying curse is standing right in front of you. Sapphira didn't hesitate to back down, quietly asking what my terms were. Help me get stronger, because my skill only triggers when I'm pushing you to the limit. So, make me your apprentice. Sapphira's pupils constricted sharply, followed by a burst of manic laughter. He slowly reached out, crimson power swirling in his palm, vowing to turn me into the most powerful being in this world. The next moment, an invisible pressure hit me like a truck. I was violently knocked back. Even just a projection of August had such a terrifying aura. The Lord of the Crimson Courtyard was once Arthur's equal, commanding legions of erosion forces. If I can get his help, I can definitely get stronger. Even if I have to use the invader's power, I will save this world from the brink of destruction. But skills are unique forces in this world. Only one person can master them in a lifetime. According to this rule, Arthur's regression skill ultimately returned to him in this life. This means I can no longer reset the timeline at my own will. If this world falls again, I'll turn to dust right along with it. There won't be another chance. A look of resignation suddenly crossed my face. Then I'm glad to have you with me, August. More importantly, Sapphira was curious why I wasn't living at the Wilhelm estate. My voice was devoid of emotion. I haven't been here in years. I've almost forgotten what my parents even look like. Just then, a veiled maid appeared in the center of the hall, saying Lady Cleo wanted to see me. My eyes narrowed. My mother? In all the years I lived at Lush Mansion, she never showed her face once, not even a single letter. Now she suddenly summons me. She must have heard the rumors about me, beating Yannix and slaying the demon. So she's finally curious about her piece of trash son. The maid gave a slow nod. The head of the house is also interested. He plans to see me personally after returning from the border. That man who already reached the demigod realm, the true power of the family, perhaps through the power of the stars. He sensed the surge of power within me and my unique soul signature. The maid continued. So Lady Cleo wants me to stay at the main estate until then. But Anka is still waiting for me at Lush Mansion. Thinking of this, I turned to leave. So this isn't an order from my father himself? In that case, I'm heading back. The maid stared in shock as I walked away, clearly not expecting anyone to defy the lady's orders. I walked out of the hall, without looking back. If my father really wants to see me, I'll return on my own. Or rather, he'll come find me himself. The carriage soon arrived back at Lush Mansion. Before stepping out, I gave instructions to Sapphira, who had turned into a crow. There is a white-haired girl inside. You'd better be friendly to her from now on. At the same time, Bianca was clutching a book tightly to her chest. She must have rushed over to greet me the moment she heard the news from the library. I looked down at her, a faint smile playing on my lips. See, I told you I'd be back on time. Right about then, Arioto handed me a letter, stating it was sent by young Master Dumphilion. The letter mentioned that the treatment for the fading disease I requested was complete. I handed the letter back to Arioto. When Dumphilion arrives at Lush Mansion, make sure to treat him with the highest hospitality. He's going to be your savior. Hearing this, Arioto's tone suddenly shifted, mentioning that Miss Bianca had been extremely worried about me. The second she heard I went to the Bluestone area, she immediately prepared a carriage, intending to go to the main estate to check on me personally after the mission. It's a good thing they stopped her in time. Otherwise, it would have been way too dangerous for a young girl to head to the main house alone. My gaze sharpened. It had been a while since I checked Bianca's curse status. Could it be? Suddenly, a burst of purple demonic energy exploded, instantly engulfing the entire lush mansion. A system window suddenly popped up. First unlock condition successfully met. Cratio Wilhelm has successfully become Bianca's friend. I didn't expect that Bianca's first curse shackle would be broken at a time like this. Now, only one final restriction remains. Thinking of this, I introduced Sapphira's identity to Bianca, telling her he was the newest member of our lush mansion family. And only now did I realize just how much Bianca loved soft, small animals. So, the next step was to find a way to lift the second curse restriction, becoming Bianca's most precious person. But the definition of this condition is just too vague. For most people, this usually means family, children, friends, or a lover. Since I am already Bianca's fiancé, becoming her lover seems like the most likely path, and this brought me another surprise. Before the regression, the conditions for stealing a curse weren't this complicated, but thinking about it, it makes sense. After all, in this life, everyone's life path has shifted. A moment later, I appeared at the training grounds. During this time, I came to realize a brutal fact. Though I was like a monster, using all sorts of experiences and past life knowledge to fill in my lack of talent. Once 5 years pass, and the true geniuses accumulate their own experience, I might not even be able to keep up with them. Even Yannick's, whom I subdued easily, back at the Holy Land of Stars, by the time he's 20, I'm afraid I won't be able to match his pace. But if Sapphira only cared about talent, he wouldn't have taken me as his disciple. In his eyes, with a skill that can seize anything, one can simply steal talent itself, and he will make me, who spent my life crawling on the ground, soar into the sky until I grow into a figure standing above the clouds of this world. And then I'll take that undying body for myself too. Time flew by, and soon it was the next day. Dumphillion arrived at Lush Mansion as promised. Before I could even speak, Dumphillion flashed a grin. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small crystal vial. The task I entrusted to him was a success. So what do you think? Would he count as an alchemy genius? Facing his half-joking tone, my answer came almost instantly. He was always a genius. This unexpected response made Dumphillion's expression stiffen. He didn't expect me to acknowledge his self-praise so bluntly. People usually think geniuses are everywhere in this world, given how they achieve peak results in their respective fields. But only I know that true geniuses are always few and far between. I once lived through the Empyrean era, where top geniuses gathered, refusing to acknowledge the brilliance of others only makes one look narrow-minded and pathetic. So, I've always frankly recognized talent. Then, I learned about Yannick's recent moves from Dumphillion. Since being crushed by Charlotte, he had completely abandoned his training. To be precise, he lost the point of training. He believed that no matter how hard he tried, he would never reach Charlotte's level. But after witnessing how I, the family failure, made such a shock at the Holy Land of Stars and rose to power, something deep inside him finally snapped. The only clear news is that Yannick has started training like a maniac again, with an intensity far beyond before. My voice was full of contempt. A meaningless struggle. To me, Yannick has always been just a treacherous traitor. Whatever turmoil he feels because of me is none of my business. Just then, a voice echoed in my head. This kind of non-physical mental transmission could only come from August, the undying of the Crimson Courtyard. He didn't expect the Stalin Kingdom, aside from the Wilhelms, to have any decent experts, let alone such a useful pawn hidden away. August's crow-like, crimson pupils glowed slightly. He clearly saw through Dumphillion's talent. It was the perfect chance to use him to refine elixir pills. An elixir pill is a forbidden concoction that massively boosts the body and battle aura. They are incredibly expensive and usually kept as secret recipes within high society noble families. But August directly demanded the refining of elixir pills. Even with Dumphillion's extraordinary talent, it wasn't something just anyone could achieve. To this, August claimed he had already completely analyzed the formula. As long as there was a brilliant alchemist, it was entirely possible. When Dumphillion heard the word elixir, he let out a light chuckle. Did I want to boost my strength by consuming elixir pills? Or was I triggered by the fact that Yannick had started training? After saying that, he watched me quietly. In fact, he didn't know much about my history. However, since his talent in alchemy had spread far and wide long ago, such a request was understandable. Then, I recited the formula August described, word for word. Dumphillion listened in silence, his expression gradually turning serious, because the elixir formulas I was describing were things he had never even dreamed of. As he mentally processed the formula, his face showed a blank look. Immediately after, that turned into pure shock. He asked how I knew these formulas. I just made up a reason, saying it was from House Wilhelms. down through generations. Hearing this, Dumfilian's eyes lit up instantly. However, there are a few ingredients even he can't get his hands on, specifically the snow-white poplar mushroom and golden dragon grass. The snow-white poplar mushroom primarily grows in the northern lands where House Hardenhars is located. Because the mountain ranges there are so treacherous, herbalists from the kingdom's side rarely manage to go there for stock. But with Bianca's help, obtaining it shouldn't be much of an issue. Next, Dumfilian raised another concern. But when it comes to golden dragon grass, I should know about that. That's a specialty medicinal herb of the Empire. Since it's directly managed by the Empire, there are no channels to sell it within the borders of the Stalin Kingdom. Even if you look on the black market, you have to be careful not to get caught by the Empire. Dumfilian didn't find this too troublesome. The Empire is soon hosting 2 martial arts tournaments. One is the adult tournament, and the other is the youth division. For those under 15 years old, the Empire's true goal is the latter, as the rewards are significantly more generous. Just placing in the top 3 gets you golden dragon grass. I know exactly why the Empire is holding this competition. The Empire is using this tournament to expand the talent pool for Laren Academy enrollment. On the surface, Laren Academy is a place for reconciliation between the kingdom and empire. But in reality, the struggle for political power is paramount. The more of your own people you can plant inside, the more you can expand your influence. Therefore, the Empire wants to use this competition to support promising young people and secure their power within Laren Academy. So, if a direct descendant of House Wilhelm like me went to participate, it would definitely turn the whole competition into a mess. Hearing this, Dumfilian's eyes lit up immediately. He then quickly pulled a vial of potion from his robe, stating it could directly alter the consumer's appearance. But what I didn't expect was that this potion actually had the effect of changing one's gender. 2 days later, at the public training grounds, I held my sword with eyes closed, trying my best to keep them shut in front of August. It wasn't about giving up perception, but using the 6th sense awakened by secret arts to capture every single abnormal movement around me, the deflection of air currents, energy fluctuations, and even the flow of the opponent's intent. Right now, I'm only at the introductory stage, but in the next instant, my blade's shadow actually predicted August's movement path before the attack even formed. August's sneer echoed overhead. He felt that my so-called 6th sense was somewhat interesting. Combining past slaughter experience with this half-baked secret art actually allowed me to develop a unique sword technique. What he called unique was the sluggish sword, pushing the 6th sense to the limit to predict the opponent's intent, then staying one step ahead to block all of their attack paths. It's a technique that looks slow, but actually controls the entire situation through eerie precision. You could say it reached a domain very similar to precognition. I remember yesterday when Dumfilian explained that it was an extremely rare transformation potion. Its effect could last for an entire week. And as his latest specially modified version, it essentially couldn't be detected by any magic. Furthermore, it wouldn't be classified as a banned stimulant. So after that, I would simply register for the competition. As an ordinary commoner of the Stalin Kingdom, there was just one thing that left me speechless. That disguised appearance is mainly manifested based on the core personality of the user. According to plan, today is the day to set off for the martial arts tournament. Meanwhile, Arioto had already been waiting by the carriage for quite some time. I suddenly thought back to the day Dumfilian sent the fading disease treatment for his daughter. He collapsed to his knees right in front of me. This man, past 50 years old, choked back tears as he thanked me. He loved his daughter so much that for the sake of her illness, he had even considered betraying the family. I told him only a few things back then. Mainly, I told him not to throw his life away so easily. I'm the one who saved your daughter's life. So Arioto, you are not allowed to die without my permission. That is the only condition I'm asking of you. From that moment on, Arioto saw me as his only and most loyal master, and I could finally wipe away the tragic memory of Arioto being poisoned from my previous life. As for his daughter, it wasn't just to secure his loyalty, it was to make up for my past regrets. The crack left in my heart from the first time I was ever betrayed finally started to heal a little. Regarding Bianca, she was preparing to follow my request and return to House Hardenhars in the north to get the snow-white poplar mushroom, one of the 2 ingredients Dumfilian needs. Time flew by, and soon it was 3 days. After leaving the Stalin Kingdom, the female merchant leading the way was clearly a veteran traveler between kingdoms. The route she chose almost perfectly avoided all world erosion zones. Per August's advice, I spent all this time focused on training. I figured I could just absorb erosion energy along the way on the return trip. With that in mind, my training felt unusually relaxed. Right about then, a few bandits suddenly blocked the road ahead of the merchant. The vile taunts made it clear this was a gang of thieves from the no man's land. Just as they were about to strike, the sound of something cutting through the air erupted. The short sword I threw flew straight and true, instantly piercing a man's skull. As the leader of these bandits, Oral had the fastest reaction. He swept his cold gaze around and immediately saw I was no ordinary kid. In the next moment, he was like lightning, slashing directly at my vitals. With a loud clang, I reflexively blocked with my sword. Immediately, a massive surge of power hit me, sending me sliding back several steps. A look of contempt flashed in Oral's eyes. It seemed the only reason I killed his man was because I caught him off guard. My next move only made Oral more certain of his theory, because the swordsmanship I was using now was laughably slow. He couldn't understand how such speed could possibly block his fierce assault. I didn't say a word, using that seemingly sluggish rhythm to precisely shut down every killing blow. Suddenly, Oral developed a bizarre sensation. It wasn't that he was attacking, but that I was guiding his axe right into my blade. Oral couldn't take it anymore and decided to use his ultimate technique. However, in the next second, he was met only by my icy cold voice, because this guy was actually using imperial arts. So, are you one of that wanted criminal Beckman's dogs? This was knowledge from my past life. It all came flooding back to me. Not too long ago, there was a village massacre that shook the empire. A guy known as the Butcher slaughtered an entire village single-handedly. That man accepted the power of the World Eater and became a corrupted servant, just like the cursed Bimo. And Bianca, he became a monstrous henchman, bound to corruption and terrorizing the world. This Butcher would eventually sneak into the Stalin kingdom, and his story would end with Charlotte catching him personally. That was the pivotal achievement that made young Charlotte a household name throughout the empire. At just 16 years old, she took down this corrupted servant all by herself. Looking at the panicked Oral in front of me, I frowned slightly, and the air around me instantly turned cold. The moment Oral began to doubt, his massive body slowly collapsed. The Butcher's dogs would eventually be killed by Charlotte anyway, so there was no need to pay too much attention to these small-timers under him. Right now, the priority is to sign up for the tournament and get the Golden Dragon herb. Beckman appeared much earlier than he did in my past life. The scene shifts to 2.5 days later. At the reception of the Ephania Imperial Martial Arts Assembly, from all over the world packed the place to the rafters. Since it was a grand event hosted by the Empire, it naturally drew everyone's attention. At the same time, a crisp voice called out from the second floor. So many interesting kids gathered together. This is going to be fun. I looked up and saw a young girl leaning lazily on the railing, radiating an air of pure innocence. She was the fourth princess of the Empire, Laura Ephania. I had already heard plenty of rumors about her. If I remember correctly, she just turned 14, making her the youngest princess. Despite her age, she possessed shocking intelligence. When she was 7, she solved a math problem that had stumped imperial scholars for years, but her flaws were just as famous. She was incredibly unruly, behaving like a spoiled child. Combined with her frail health, she couldn't survive the brutal struggle for the throne, so she purposely acted irresponsible to stay out of the succession conflict. A mischievous smirk slowly formed on Laura's lips. All these delicious-looking targets. She would pick them out one by one, send them all to Lateran Academy, and make them her prey. The next moment, her eyes suddenly locked onto me. I instinctively suppressed my presence. Laura's voice was full of curiosity. For some reason, this one has a real villainous vibe. He looks exactly like someone from the Wilhelm family, our old enemies. After receiving my entry papers, I quickly left the reception hall. On the papers was my forged identity. Name, Daniel. Age, 11. Born in the remote border town of Ojevan. Well then, only one goal remains. The Golden Dragon herb. This medicinal herb was a key ingredient, specified by ODST. It's also crucial for strengthening my body and fixing my physical weaknesses. With the preliminaries just 2 days away, I need to find a place to stay fast, so I can get into the right headspace. But reality soon hit me hard. I checked several hotels in a row, and they were all completely booked. The city was swarming with fighters here for the competition, and high-profile spectators. Even the tiny inns in the back alleys had no vacancy signs hanging up. Sleeping outside for one night wouldn't be the end of the world, but the finals are at least a week away. If I sleep on the streets every night, I'll risk blowing my cover. Just as I was starting to worry, a gentle voice spoke up right next to me. I looked up and saw a gray-haired old lady standing there. She had a kind smile on her face. "You look like a young man here for the tournament, if you don't mind." She mentioned she had an extra room at her place. I didn't hesitate and agreed immediately, telling her I'd appreciate the stay. On the way there, August whispered a joke over my shoulder. Didn't I ever learn as a kid not to just run off with strangers? I ignored him. I already knew what it felt like to sleep on the streets during the war against the World Eater. Having a steady place to crash was much better than being exposed to unknown dangers. Besides, the old lady's aura was peaceful. She didn't show even a hint of malice. Then, following the lady's lead, I carried my bag slowly up to the second floor. Right at that moment, standing in front of me, a familiar figure suddenly appeared. The second I saw who it was, my entire body froze. This person was none other than that unruly fourth princess, Laura. Hardly anyone outside the palace knew what she looked like. She must have been confident no one would recognize her, daring to show up so casually in the slums. It clicked instantly. No wonder the old lady suddenly offered me a room. She had probably been tailing me ever since I left the registration desk. I just didn't know how she did it, guiding me here without me even noticing. Who would have thought the useless young master of the Wilhelm family would end up living under the same roof as the Empire's fourth princess? What shocked me even more was that Laura didn't just share her name voluntarily. She also saw right through my true origins. Even though the Empire and the Stalin Kingdom speak the same language, Stalin speakers tend to put more stress on plosive syllables. So even though I mixed in some imperial slang, my core accent was impossible to hide. While I was downstairs grabbing a meal, Laura and her maid, Sarah, were whispering and plotting something. You're saying he already knows who you are? What exactly do you mean by that? Exactly what I said. The way I acted around him showed I've already figured out his identity. My attitude when I first met the old lady was completely different from when I met him. The real thing to watch is the vibe of a first meeting. Everyone acts differently when meeting someone new, but based on my reaction, it wasn't the awkwardness of two strangers at all. It was the natural flow of people who've known each other forever. Because of this, Laura actually felt even more confused. She was positive she was meeting this boy for the first time, someone who had never existed in her memory. How could he act so familiar with her? Could I be pretending to know her on purpose? Unless he's some world-class con artist. There's no way he could hide that from her eyes. She quickly ran through the possibilities in her head and then let out a light laugh. Maybe I really am just a total fraud. More importantly, she was more curious about her sister, Sigrin's current situation. Hearing that, Sarah's expression immediately turned serious. Based on all the clues, the third princess, Lady Sigrin, has indeed become a different person compared to a year ago. Sigrin Ephania, the third princess, was Laura's older sister. She was an incredible sword prodigy who carried the hopes of the entire nation, destined to be the Empire's most brilliant knight. But a year ago, Laura had already noticed her strange transformation. Sigrin was no longer the sister she used to know. In the blink of an eye, it was the day of the tournament's preliminaries, as a way to test everyone's raw strength. The rules were simple and brutal. A free-for-all with 100 people per group. Only the top 4 from each group move on to the next round. Thanks to the hellish training I went through under August, dealing with opponents of this level wasn't a problem at all. After the preliminaries, I slowly walked toward the tunnel to the break area. Just then, I heard the sound of someone clapping and laughing behind me. A weirdo with his face completely covered in bandages was standing in the corner. He was staring me down, a creepy smile showing through the gaps in the bandages. In an impatient, cold tone, I asked him what the hell he was laughing at. I never had much patience for shady characters like him. Well, an interesting comrade just showed up, so of course I'm laughing. If I'm not mistaken, you're one of those sent by the assassination group, Hydra. My brow furrowed at those words. Hydra, the most secretive and brutal underground assassination guild in the Empire. I didn't expect them to actually send someone to the tournament, even with the memories of 2 lifetimes. It was impossible to know every secret in the Empire. Besides, during my time at Latrin Academy, I had never even heard of Hydra. Even if the Imperial family were crazy, they'd never let an assassin set foot in the academy. But a second later, a name exploded in my mind, sending a bone-chilling shiver down my spine. Sigrin Ephania. That third princess was a returner just like me, carrying memories of past cycles. Thinking of that, I coldly denied it, telling him I had no idea what he was talking about. The bandaged man's gaze shifted to August. The crow on your shoulder is all the proof I need. Plus, that sinister aura you're putting off. I was almost crawled out of the underworld. He followed that with a malicious laugh. Don't worry, I'm not planning on exposing you. After all, the faction behind you isn't something I want to mess with. But since we're both from the underground, we might as well look out for each other. With that, he waved his hand and walked away. I watched him leave, my eyes darkening. No matter who this guy was, I had to find out what he was really up to. August suddenly took flight, landing right in front of the bandaged man. A second later, the man froze in his tracks, his eyes becoming hollow and vacant. It's just a low-level hypnosis spell. In this state, no matter what I ask, he'll tell the truth. The bandaged man turned his head blankly, clearly fully under the control of the hypnosis. His voice was monotonous, but he dropped news that made my heart race. The Hydra organization was almost wiped out not too long ago. Even though they sent people to the tournament recently, they were acting on their new master's orders. Their purpose was to submit completely to the new master after their destruction. And the one behind the destruction of Hydra was actually the second prince of the Empire. This left me completely bewildered. This was a rumor leaked on purpose. The second prince definitely didn't have the power to take down an assassination group like Hydra. Besides, Hydra's secrets went far beyond the surface. I clearly remembered that this famous guild of assassins was actually the shadow of the Imperial family. They seemed to drift through the underworld, but they were really the henchmen of the royalty, specializing in the Empire's dirty laundry and secrets that couldn't see the light of day. There were even rumors saying that as long as you carried a crow-related mark through the Imperial back alleys, you could avoid being harassed by the underworld. That was just a story spread by the royalty to make Hydra's existence even more intimidating, while using it to spy on nobles involved with the underground and skillfully balance the different factions. And in my past life, in the first, Prince's power would crumble in an instant. This immediately made me think of that woman, carrying memories of past lives, Sigrin Ephania. Besides her, I couldn't think of anyone else with that kind of skill and ambition. This wasn't the second prince's ambition at all. It was a trap set by Sigrin. And those rumors about the second prince controlling Hydra, Sigrin was likely the one pulling the strings behind that too, leaking it on purpose, so that even underworld members like the bandaged guy would know. I lowered my head in thought, quickly running through the list of imperial family members. Damn it, Sigrin's real target was never the first or second prince. It was Laura of Fania. That seemingly unruly, but actually brilliant fourth princess. Right after the first prince died at Sigrin's hands, just before she was about to put Arthur on the throne, Laura hid the white dragon seal, the symbol of imperial power, and then committed suicide. Without the white dragon seal, no one could legitimately inherit the throne. That's been the unwritten rule of the empire for 1,000 years. In the end, even though Sigrin and Arthur technically took the throne, they couldn't unify the empire without that seal. They were rulers in name only. The result was internal chaos within the empire, leaving it powerless to stop the spread of world corruption. Naturally, now that Sigrin has returned, she'll definitely be looking to remove that obstacle early. If that's the case, I can't let Sigrin's plan succeed. But before that, I have to find the real Hydra hiding in the finals. As the preliminaries drew to a close, a bizarre rumor started spreading through every street and alley in the capital. Supposedly, among the contestants in the youth division, there was a hidden member of the mysterious assassin group, Hydra. Because of this, over half the audience showed up specifically because of that rumor. They were on the edge of their seats, wanting to see for themselves if it was true. And the pitch-black crow on my shoulder fit the description of Hydra's symbol perfectly. Then there was my outfit and appearance. I looked exactly like a killer from the Imperial Underworld. Everyone was convinced I was that rumored Hydra contestant. In the end, I successfully achieved my goal. As I was walking away from the arena, a man was standing at the end of the hallway, seemingly waiting for me. His eyes were dead and cold. The moment he saw me, the corners of his mouth curled up into a creepy smirk. Did you really think pretending to be Hydra would be fun? I immediately felt a sharp wave of killing intent. A cold, glinting blade was pressed right against my throat, but I was ready for it. The instant the blade was about to touch my neck, I grabbed his wrist. Instead of being upset, he laughed, actually impressed that I had some real skills. I let out a dismissive, cold laugh. I didn't think you'd take the bait so fast. Next, I sidestepped, easily dodging the dagger, while landing a hard kick right to his gut. The man stumbled back, crashing into the hallway wall. Ignoring his panic, I closed in on him step by step. Necromancy built on world corruption doesn't work on me. With my level of bloodline purity, I can resist all spells of that type. Then, I whispered a name. Abel asked, right now? Sigrin must be holding your heart in her hands, isn't she? Let's make a deal. I promise to help you get your heart back. In exchange, tell me everything, Sigrin's plan, and every order she gave you. Everything. The guy standing in front of me right now is actually a world invader from another realm, as well as a necromancer whose heart was stolen and imprisoned in the Imperial Palace for 1,000 years. Abel asked, Bernabach. I remember from my past life, the first time I met Abel asked. One day, Arthur brought him to the Azure Sky battalion camp, saying this man would be useful in the future. I barely spoke to him at first, only knowing that he was the world's one and only necromancer. Later, I found out that for Abel asked, the so-called Hydra organization was just a force patched together from corpses, and Abel Ask was the mastermind behind it all. Thinking about it, necromancers are naturally the perfect assassins. Corpses aren't like the living. Even if an assassin is caught, they will never leak any intel. As for this weird-looking guy in front of me, he's just one of the undead puppets under Abel Ask's command. Following the directions, I found the place where Abel Ask was imprisoned because he needed to see for himself if I could actually get his heart back. He had to verify it personally. The next moment, I activated the power of the Black Wisdom skill, aiming directly at his chest, at the heart that should be beating in his ribs, but had been stolen by the Imperial family for a millennium. In an instant, the all-too-familiar soul-stealing shackles appeared before my eyes. As long as I break these chains, I can use the power of Black Wisdom to help him reclaim his own heart. But I didn't act immediately. I just said flatly, to break these chains, only two conditions matter. Either you complete the harsh requirements set by the shackles, or I get your full, willing permission. Only if you truly want to temporarily transfer your heart to me will these shackles completely vanish. Abel Ask hurriedly shouted, saying that I already had his permission. But the soul-stealing shackles didn't budge an inch. At that, I continued explaining, just saying it isn't enough. If there's even a hint of hesitation in your heart, these chains won't disappear on their own. After all, the human heart isn't something that can be easily manipulated. 1,000 years of obsession meant that even though Abel Ask craved freedom, he couldn't just drop his guard instantly. Abel Ask looked confused, clearly not getting the key point. So I softened my voice, painting a picture of the life he dreamed of. If we successfully take back your heart, you can stay in this room forever and do absolutely nothing. Let the puppets handle everything for you. They'll find every book you want to read and prepare an endless supply of food. You can lie in bed as much as you want, and you'll never have to take orders from anyone again. But if you don't get your heart back, you'll keep being the Empire's puppet, working for them for the rest of your life. Day after day, you'll be carrying out the same murderous orders you're sick of. If you don't want to live like that anymore, Then give me your heart with total sincerity. Only then can you be truly free from your bonds and live a life where you never have to work again. The look in Abel Ask's eyes wavered violently. A moment later, his voice filled with desperate resolve. He begged me to take his heart. The instant those words left his mouth, the soul-stealing shackles floating before me shattered and vanished. Every single constraint was completely gone. I had successfully broken the soul-stealing shackles on Abel Ask, and through that, I also learned about Sigrin's next move. Sarah Petra, acting as the personal attendant to the fourth princess, Laura Iphania, possesses master-level strength. But in Sigrin's plan, he is destined to die by the Empire's strongest spear, Diana Merlin. Afterward, his body would be turned into an undead puppet by Abel Ask, ultimately serving as bait to assassinate Princess Laura. And sure enough, later that evening, Sarah fell before the spear of Diana Merlin. It has now been exactly 1 year since the return to the past. The moment the memory transfer was complete, Merlin immediately rushed to the meeting point, agreed upon with her best friend, Sigrin. Then, they tirelessly went to search for Arthur. He had appeared in person and clearly stated he would wait for their return right there. But Arthur had vanished. Even more baffling, Abella had also gone missing. Now, the only thing she can do is assist the third princess, Sigrin, becoming the sharpest spear in her hand. That is why she followed Sigrin's orders and killed Sarah with her own hands. Time flew by, and the Iphania Imperial Martial Arts Assembly Finals arrived. Thanks to the help from Abel Ask, I took on another identity for this match. A formal member of the Hydra organization sent to compete. First to the stage was one of the finalists, a boy from a remote border town named Pelin, who dreamed of protecting world peace. But I remembered clearly that this seemingly ordinary boy would become a key powerhouse for the Azure Sky generation. Helen struck first. His toes barely touched the ground as he glided forward with eerie speed. His footwork was light, yet packed a serious punch. I recognized it as his original technique, called 1,000 Milestone Step, rumored to cover vast distances in a single bound. This unique skill was perfectly displayed on the field. Next, Helen's blade lunged straight for my waist, but my longsword moved as if it had eyes of its own, blocking the surprise attack with pinpoint accuracy. Some things are far more decisive than mere training. That is an absolute understanding of your opponent. I once stood behind the scenes of that generation. I knew their moves and habits better than anyone. Helen's sword seemed guided by invisible threads, every strike falling right into my trap. This was a level of swordsmanship beyond speed and power, predicting the opponent's positioning to dictate the rhythm of the fight. Unsurprisingly, I won the martial arts assembly with an overwhelming advantage in the best seats of the arena. The second prince, Iphania, was clapping enthusiastically. What a fantastic performance. He was already dreaming big. If he could use Hydra's power to show off and win over the nobles, he might just seize the throne for himself. While he was lost in his delusions, footsteps suddenly echoed nearby. A group of armored knights stood at the door. The Imperial Black Dragon Knights. Their presence meant a criminal was on site. Before the second prince could even react, a cold voice called out his name directly. It was Diana Merlin. She was officially arresting the second prince on the charge of conspiring to murder the fourth princess, Laura Iphania. Merlin's words left Chiffon completely stunned. Why would he kill Laura? That mischievous little brat wasn't even worth his time. But Merlin's tone left no room for doubt. At a Hydra hideout, she had uncovered a direct order to execute the fourth princess, and it was clearly written in the prince's handwriting. Just then, a mocking voice slowly drifted over. The tone of these words made the knights and Merlin pause for a moment. Because the person showing up was the fourth princess, Laura Iphania, who was supposed to be dead, and she was accompanied by her attendant, Sarah Petra. Merlin couldn't wrap her head around the situation. She had killed Sarah with her own hands. According to the plan, Abel Ask was supposed to turn Sarah into an undead puppet and have her personally take Laura's head. But these impossible scenarios just kept happening one after another. Laura only gave a short, cold laugh. In response, Merlin's heart skipped a beat as she realized everything. The fourth princess had always been praised for having a genius mind far beyond others. Sigrin knew this too, which is why she had made preparations in advance. If Laura had seen through everything and taken action, then from here on out, she would become a massive obstacle. As the knight serving Sigrin, she had to carry out her master's orders. But she had overlooked one detail. When I first learned of Sigrin's plan, I had August place an undying mark on Sarah. Because of that, no matter what, Sarah couldn't be killed directly. A flash of ruthlessness crossed Merlin's eyes. She couldn't make a move herself right now, no matter how Sarah was resurrected. It had to be Abel Ask's doing. Thinking this, Merlin immediately reached into her pocket and squeezed the heart belonging to Abel Ask. In that moment, Abel Ask's eyes widened, and he clutched his chest tightly. Merlin was using the heart to force an order upon him, even though I was ready to break the shackles. Back then, I had held off on using the Black Wisdom skill. If the heart suddenly vanished, Sigrun and Merlin would definitely notice something was wrong. So, Abelast's heart was still in the enemy's hands. The next instant, countless corpses surged up from beneath his feet, just as the Black Dragon Knights were about to engage the undead. The surging corpses suddenly froze in place as if turned to stone. They just stopped. Merlin was instantly hit with a wave of panic. Abelast, who had been collapsed on the ground in tears, was no longer feeling any pain. Instead, he looked incredibly relieved. As Merlin hurriedly tried to squeeze the heart again, she realized her pocket was empty. Her mind began to race. The failed assassination of Princess Laura and the loss of Abelast's heart. The way these two events were connected left her completely disoriented. It directly triggered one of his bad habits. When things go wrong, he usually acts first and thinks later. What this habit led to was precisely his primary goal, the assassination of Lola. Body. A powerful surge of spiritual energy erupted from him, known as the strongest spear. He prepared to forcibly assassinate the Empire's fourth princess as his long spear thrust straight toward Lola's neck. Someone who he had never taken seriously, a scrawny boy, actually stepped in to block his full-force strike. At the same time, my voice slowly drifted over, whether back then or now. That simple head of yours hasn't changed one bit. Merlin eventually gave up the fight and gently lowered his spear. Seeing this, the Black Dragon Knights immediately rushed forward to bind him tightly. After successfully crushing Siglin's plot, I parted ways with Lola and the others. Then, carrying the freshly acquired golden dragon grass, I set off on the journey back to the kingdom. Besides that, traveling with me was Abel, who refused to work for the Empire anymore. Meanwhile, in the northern lands, it seemed Bianca had also run into trouble. I'm doomed. I'm totally doomed. I never expected my opponent this time would be Beckman, the man known as the Empire's Mad Dog. Just now, I received news that Bianca was in trouble, and just a few days ago, a stranger named Beckman had secretly sneaked into the Hardenhall's estate. Beckman the Mutt, the lunatic who went on the run after a massacre in the Empire. And Bianca, wanting to pick snow sheep mushrooms, happened to head into the mountains where that mutt was hiding. After that, Bianca completely lost contact. The scene shifts back to a few days ago. At that time, following my instructions, Bianca returned to the Hardenhall's family to find snow sheep mushrooms, just as she had already expected. The treatment she received here was still terrible. However, she was already used to such treatment because of a curse. She became the most worthless existence in the Hardenhall's family. In addition, there was her sister, Janica Hardenhalls. To Janica, Bianca was the child whose birth caused their mother's death during infancy. Even so, due to the influence of the curse, Bianca had no feeling for the emotion of sadness. No matter how much hatred and anger piled up in Janica's heart, Bianca always just looked at her with that uncomfortable, expressionless face. And that is exactly why Janica resented Bianca beyond measure. Now that Bianca is back, there's no way Janica would let her off so easily. Later, Bianca began searching for the snow sheep mushrooms I had requested. But no matter how she looked, she couldn't buy any in the end. First, because the people who could gather snow sheep mushrooms were few and far between. And second, because of Janica's interference. Janica had already instructed all the merchant caravans not to sell any snow sheep mushrooms to Bianca. With no other choice, Bianca had to set off on a mountain climbing journey alone. When Janica learned what she was doing, she had a look of disbelief on her face. She really didn't understand why Bianca would take such a risk. Since she was little, aside from reading, Bianca had never shown the slightest interest in anything else. Even though she hated this sister from the bottom of her heart, if something happened to Bianca in the mountains, she would be in deep trouble too. After all, Bianca was the designated fiancée of the Wilhelm family. With that thought, Janica quickly caught up to her in the snowy mountains. Bianca was stumbling forward when she promised to give her the snow sheep mushroom she wanted. Hearing this, Bianca turned around and followed her. If she could get the snow sheep mushrooms, there would be no need to take such a risk. But just then, a voice shattered the silence between them, and that person was none other than the bloodthirsty slaughter dog, Beckman. Since they had no other choice, they could only brace themselves and run toward the rift area, but they soon came to a halt. Janica looked out, instantly stunned into silence. Before them was the edge of an endless cliff. At the same time, Beckman's voice slowly drifted from behind. He didn't seem used to running on snow, but that didn't matter. Not when he got to meet such beautiful girls. The next moment, Bianca didn't hesitate to pull Janica and leap into the bottomless abyss. Beckman cursed loudly and immediately jumped down after them. The moment Beckman leaped from the cliff, his eyes widened in surprise. He was shocked to find that the two who jumped before him hadn't fallen. Currently, Bianca and Janica were standing on a slight rock protrusion. Beckman let out a shout of shock, then swung his axe, cleaving directly forward. Just then, Bianca stepped forward and took Beckman down the cliff with her. By the time I rushed to the Hardenhall's estate, An entire week had passed since Bianca went missing. Meanwhile, on the other side, Bianca was lucky. She landed in an area with deep snow. Even luckier, it didn't take long for Bianca to discover a massive, century-old tree. On the branches of that ancient tree, she saw the snow sheep mushroom, a rare elixir that had absorbed plenty of sunlight and was pure white throughout. Even just getting close, one could feel the unique warmth it radiated. Then, as time passed, Beckman finally caught up to a lone Bianca. The beautiful lady sure knows how to run. It's getting annoying. With that, he reached out and grabbed Bianca, lifting her entire body up by force. The stinging pain from having her hair pulled made Bianca's whole body tremble. She then seemed to see my figure. The worthless young master of the Wilhelm family never cared about the curse on her. Sometimes, he would even give her a look of apology. Before she knew it, she realized that I had already become incredibly important in her heart. Bianca used her last ounce of strength to make a voice that was barely a whisper. She hoped that at the final moment of her life, she could see me again. And at that very moment, a figure quickly punched, striking Beckman's side. "Sorry, Bianca. I'm late." After making sure Bianca was safe, I slowly stared down the mad dog. "Beckman, no matter who you are, the final winner of this battle will only be Crash Wilhelm." The next moment, the giant axe in Beckman's hand swung violently toward me. And in that flash of lightning, my sword, even if not in the best position, precisely blocked those fierce strikes. This made my heart sink. My intuition showed that I couldn't keep up with the opponent's speed. Just comparing their aura reserves, this guy had already reached the peak of expert level. He must have broken through his limits after becoming a minion of the World Corruptor, and I had only just recently promoted to expert. Beckman then swung his axe repeatedly in rapid succession, but every single one of his attacks my long sword quickly sealed off every opening. With another violent collision, due to my lack of strength, the sword in my hand was almost completely knocked aside. I suddenly realized that a sword used for parrying cannot fully offset the opponent's power, and therefore cannot expand my range of control. I pushed my focus to the absolute limit. Then let's try this move of pure flame power. Right at that moment, the surrounding scenery suddenly shifted. The mountains that were just covered in white snow were unknowingly draped in a deep crimson. I recognized it. This was Beckman's signature move, Phantom Bind. This is a terrifying secret technique that interferes with the opponent's senses by releasing an aura. Once caught in the Phantom Bind, before completely losing consciousness, all perceptions are stripped away, and the body feels as if it is falling into an endless hell. Watching me gradually lose my senses, Beckman finally flashed a mocking smile. He wanted to see exactly how long I could hold out, but in his heart, he had to admit just how dangerous it was. When I launched my attack earlier, the opponent was just a boy, at an absolute disadvantage in both strength and aura intensity. He originally thought he could toy with this seemingly weak opponent at will, but he never expected he would end up using this secret technique, capable of destroying everything. I raised my sword again to launch an attack, since he used illusions to block out any pain that would hinder the fight. Beckman's movements were now more ferocious than ever. Sure of his victory, Beckman's axe swung wildly from all directions. My long sword barely parried, but every collision sent me reeling backward. In the distance, Abel Asco bit his lip. I was the benefactor who helped him regain his heart. Even if it was just a trade, he had his own limits. He didn't want to just stand by and watch me die, but if he made a move, he would be targeted by the person behind Beckman, known as the Rabid Dog. The Rabid Dog is an extremely powerful existence among the world corruptors. Once they lock onto a prey, they never stop until it is dead. Augustus, however, told him not to intervene in this battle. Please trust that child who helped you regain your heart. That is a lone walker, recognized by the master of the Crimson Court. Currently, I was gasping for air. Overextending my sixth sense caused the veins on my face to bulge. This was the first time I had overloaded my sixth sense like this. After all, I am weak. Without extraordinary talent, I simply cannot crush opponents with overwhelming power like a genius. So I must wait for the opponent to completely drop their guard, the moment they think victory is in their grasp, before I can reveal my true self without reservation. And at this very moment, my sixth sense finally reached its limit. With a whoosh, flames suddenly ignited within my body. The power of the World Corruptor was now completely set ablaze inside me. I felt as if the entire world had come to a standstill. The scorching aura surging from within instantly shattered the Phantom Bind. And this is my ultimate trump card. A unique secret technique I created myself. By combining Ignis with blood-gathering poison, my figure blurred as I dashed forward against Beckman's axe until the sword was right at his throat. Beckman didn't notice a thing, because my speed right now was at the absolute extreme. Not until now did Beckman belatedly realize the presence of that deadly sword. However, Beckman was indeed an experienced hunter. In the next moment, a sound wave boomed from his mouth, instantly throwing off my aim. The long sword in my hand veered off course, stabbing fiercely into his right shoulder. Meanwhile, the flames on my body began to fade. Because that ultimate move of mine can only last for 3 seconds at most. The tables turned completely in an instant. Beckman endured the agonizing pain in his shoulder and swung back toward where I was. Seeing this, I let go of the sword with my right hand, dampening the remaining flames. I funneled all that energy into my right palm. Then I threw up my right arm without hesitation, meeting Beckman's axe with everything I had. As expected, my right hand was hacked off right then and there. But in that split second, the arm pierced by the axe bought me a few precious seconds of life. In this desperate moment, azure flames ignited in my eyes. My mind, in this very moment, suddenly entered a sublime state of oneness. This overwhelming mental power left even August, who was watching nearby, in total awe. The long sword still lodged in Beckman's shoulder was now completely one with my will. Witnessing this, a look of pure despair washed over Beckman. This sheer pressure made even a butcher like him feel helpless. Strike! The sword drove down from Beckman's shoulder, splitting him in half, and I, completely exhausted, fell into a deep sleep. A moment later, I stared blankly at an unfamiliar ceiling. I had forgotten how long it had been since I felt this much pain. It had been ages. Just then, I saw a head of snow-white hair by my bed. I watched Bianca quietly, then broke the silence first, asking why she went into the deep mountains alone. The Rockhell Mountains are incredibly steep, especially the year-round snow-capped Harz region. In the Harz area, Bianca spoke slowly. She said she needed the white snow auspicious herb. I let out a helpless sigh. Should I chew her out? Or tell her she did a good job? Bianca continued in a low voice, saying that looking at my empty right sleeve, she felt a heavy sense of responsibility. Yet, it was just a purely cold sense of duty. She couldn't even make an expression because of it, couldn't shed a tear, and her face wouldn't flush with embarrassment. Even though I ended up like this to save her, she couldn't feel any emotion at all. This was the first time Bianca had felt this kind of torture so intensely. She shook her head in agony as she spoke. She was so worried that her curse would affect those truly close to her. She didn't want me to lose my feelings, didn't want to see me become like her. What a contradictory thought. But other than saying that, Bianca couldn't think of any other way to express it. While she was lost in her inner struggle, my calm voice slowly drifted over. Don't worry, Bianca. The curse won't affect anyone but the target. Even if I accept your curse, my emotions won't disappear. You should know the young master of the Wilhelm family is an expert at handling curses. Hearing my words, Bianca slowly raised her head. Then at least for this moment, make this damn expressionless face go away. She wanted to thank me with a smile for pulling her out of the abyss time and time again. She wanted to scold herself in anger for her stupidity and stubbornness, which cost me my arm. Now, the emotions in Bianca's heart were surging so wildly that even this wicked curse couldn't bind them anymore. She begged me to help her find her feelings again. Ding! The system window popped up randomly. The second curse shackle has been successfully broken. Crush Wilhelm has successfully become Bianca's most cherished person. With my help, Bianca successfully broke the snow doll curse. At that exact moment, Bianca's tears began to pour out without warning. It wasn't because something got in her eyes, but because 13 years of bottled-up sorrow finally shattered the shackles of the curse. That face, which had always been dead calm, showed a clear expression of grief for the first time. By the time the next day rolled around, Bianca was called away to attend the Hardenhar's family council meeting. I took the chance to look down at my right arm. It was completely empty. I couldn't feel a single thing anymore. August brought up the promise I once made to become the strongest, and then seize the power of immortality from him. But now that I'd lost my right arm, it seemed like that promise could never be kept. My tone remained steady, acting like this was no big deal. August, don't get all worked up. I know exactly how to fix this arm. Normally, I just have to take a trip to the Holy Kingdom. In Freeman, one of the 4 great kingdoms. Word is a legendary saint lives there who can bring the dead back to life. But as I am now, I'm in no position to borrow the saint's power. Even though my status in the family has improved a bit, in the eyes of the Wilhelm family, I'm still just a half-baked failure. Wilhelm never wastes a fortune on someone worthless. Getting a regular priest to pray for me is already pushing it. Then I spoke honestly about my actual plan to get my arm back. Since I've already lost my right hand, I'm going to get the best one possible. And right now, there's one person who can help me do it. As the only necromancer in this world, Eber Ask is a master of corpse manipulation arts. To him, attaching a new arm isn't a challenge at all. I'm not sure what his price will be this time, but getting my arm back is the top priority, and my primary target is that guy named Kinzaki. The moment he heard that name, August's body suddenly stiffened. Kinzaki, the powerhouse who once made the whole world tremble. His draw speed was so insane that no one on Earth could track his blade. More importantly, Kinzaki was once August's most loyal servant. I know, August is deeply obsessed with his subordinates. To August, his subordinates are his only window to observe this world, so he always unconsciously pours his heart into them. Even knowing that attachment brings pain, he never stops. I remember in my past life, Arthur once told me, the way to find August's real body was to capture and torture his subordinates. Once August realized that, to protect his people, he would cough up his location voluntarily. Right now, August's voice had a faint, unnoticeable tremor. He said Kinzaki had been dead for a long time, but his swordsmanship isn't dead. You know his skills better than anyone. If I can get Kinzaki's arm, I can definitely bring his blade work back to life. August fell dead silent at those words. Then he folded his wings and glared at me. This damn kid. Does he think talking trash will get him what he wants? Fine then, let's wait another 2 days. To my surprise, August finally chose to agree. Meanwhile, in the Hardin family meeting room, as the acting head of the Hardin family, the eldest son, Mirio, proposed that the marriage alliance with the Wilhelms should be switched to Janica instead. Bianca's brow furrowed slightly. A clear look of displeasure crossed her face for the first time. Then, she stated with a firm tone that she didn't agree with this decision. Mirio's face darkened immediately. Look, this is about serious family business, so please stop acting like a spoiled brat. But Bianca didn't back down an inch. She was a child then, and she still is now. So she should be able to speak up for what she wants. She looked Mirio straight in the eye. The only identity she wanted to keep was being the fiancé of Crush Wilhelm. Mirio was completely set off by her stubbornness. The young master of the Wilhelm family has shown terrifying power in his bloodline. He's going to be a major player in the Stalin kingdom, so a cursed child like her will eventually be heartlessly tossed aside by him. Janica was shocked by those harsh words. Yet, facing Mirio's burning rage, Bianca didn't even blink. This is her father's, brother's, and sister's home. It never belonged to her. So even if she's kicked out, she won't stop being my fiancé. Mirio was shaking with anger. Just as he was about to snap, my cold voice suddenly cut them off. Sorry about that, Brother Mirio. I have no intention of switching fiancés. And as for me killing the Butcher Beckman at the Hardenhar's estate, there are 2 ways to spin this. First, Crush Wilhelm stood up to protect his fiancée. And despite losing an arm, he still managed to keep her safe. That's a perfect story for the Hardenhar's family. Since it proves how much I value this engagement, it would only make the bond between Hardenhar's and Wilhelm even stronger. The second way to tell it is that due to a security lapse by the Hardens, the Butcher slipped right in and nearly killed a direct descendant of the Wilhelms. That's a disaster. People won't just doubt the Harden security. It could actually blow up the entire alliance. As the acting head, I'm sure you can make the smart choice. Mirio stopped fighting it and asked what my terms were. Straight up. I turned slowly to Bianca. It's simple. Respect Bianca's wishes. Whether we stay engaged is up to her. Seeing Bianca standing firmly behind me, Mirio was a bit confused. Can I really stay by a cursed person forever? You really don't know your own family at all. As for the curse, I never gave a damn about it from the start. I stopped for a second on my way out. Oh, one more thing. I want you to tell the world that my arm was healed by a priest from your family. If you're worried, you can wait until you see it for yourself. Before reporting back to the Wilhelms, as we walked away, Mirio turned to Janica, asking if she felt the same way. He could actually sense a real emotional change in Bianca right now.